Good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you're at. It is time for another installation of the Modern Streamers League. We're in the midst of Season 1, a 10-week gauntlet of 20 of Twitch's best Modern players who you watch with their streams nearly day in and day out. I'm Sean Seacrease, along with League participant and creator, the Saint Doom, Mike Goldenberg, and Yama Killer, Gal Schlesinger, our guest this evening as he slides in. Yama, thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight. You fell from the ranks of the undefeated on Monday night with your loss to the other gentleman who joins us tonight, the Saint Doom. Is that just a bad matchup for you against Karn, or did you feel like things just didn't go your way?
I felt like it was both a bad matchup as well as the fact that Michael played amazingly as well. Did not help. In fact, as well as I did not play the greatest, I think, on that day. All those things come together to give me my first loss of the league.
Yeah, it was interesting watching the only two undefeated players that'll go head-to-head this week in that matchup. Now, we have another player bidding to stay undefeated. That's Sspiderspace on Team Ice, and we'll see Sspiderspace coming up in round 5 tonight. Can he stay undefeated as he goes head-to-head with Susurrus? Susurrus, he had the bandana going. He was getting his last-minute practice in just before our Modern Streamers League here this evening. He's all warmed up. We'll see him play against Sspiderspace later this evening. Mike, did you feel good about your matchup when it came to your angle? I know you sort of hedged in the forecast of doom for your matchup against Yama Killer last week. Now that it's in the books and you're 4-0, what does it feel like?
Honestly, it feels pretty great. I've definitely gotten lucky. I've definitely had some things go my way. But I'm just happy to be, honestly, playing in a league with such great players every single week.
And it's been an amazing show of talent so far here on the Modern Streamers League. Team Ice versus Team Fire. That's how we break it up. And we're keeping track of team match wins throughout Season 1. And it could not be closer. Mathematically, it could not be closer. Team Ice, thanks to a victory in the final round on Monday night by the Saint Doom, broke the tie at 17 apiece, and they lead 18 matches to 17 over Team Fire as we enter Night 2 of Week 4 here on the Modern Streamers League. Of course, our two teams are playing for great charities throughout Season 1. Team Fire is playing for A21. They seek to end human trafficking around the globe. And Team Ice, they're playing for the Cancer Research Institute, looking to end all forms of cancer all around the world. Two absolutely valuable services. And if you want to support your team, you can donate to their two charities just below us. You want to see a favorite player's deck? It's all known tech in the Modern Streamers League. All the decks are listed just below us as well. And we even have posted matchups thanks to Flying Delver as he gives you breakdowns each week on the deck strengths, weaknesses, and the matchups heading into it. We'll get a most detailed matchup coming up in the forecast of doom just before round 1. This is the Modern Streamers League, and round 1 tonight will see us pit Capolo 42. Capolo is going to roll in with his Saheeli combo deck and try to take down NobleMurloc on Zoo Burn. This is an archetype that fell out of favor for a while in Modern. Can NobleMurloc ride it to a win here tonight? We'll find out as we get the first of 5 rounds started. It's time for the forecast of doom as we kick off Night 2, Week 4 of the Modern Streamers League.
Welcome to the Forecast of Doom, Week 4, Night 2 edition. We have here NobleMurloc against Capolo, Naya Burn, and Jeskai Saheeli. Now, this is a aggro deck against a combo control deck. Those lightning helixes on Jeskai Saheeli's side can do a lot of work against a Zoo Burn deck. They can both kill a Wild Mikado and effectively counter a Lava Spike all in one. Now, NobleMurloc's going to have to come off with a fast start because the combo on Jeskai Saheeli's end is very, very strong against Lightning Bolt, with the fact that Felidar Guardian is a 1/4 and doesn't die to Lightning Bolt. That means that Jeskai Saheeli can play a tempo game, burn out some creature spells, survive, and then land and combo off. Because of that, and because this Naya Burn list is more Zoo than Burn, I think Saheeli is slightly favored in this matchup unless Burn gets off to an absolutely fast start. Now, Saheeli has a ton ton of creature removal, and this burn list has a ton of creatures. I could see this going in Burn's favor if Jeskai Saheeli has a bunch of Path Exiles in hand, and NobleMurloc's Naya Burn has a bunch of non-creature burn spells. A handful of Rift Bolts, Lightning Bolts, and Lava Spikes does a lot of work, again, and a Tarkus Command does a lot of work against Path Exile. So that is really how I think it's going to play out. I think it's slightly favored to Jeskai Saheeli, especially with those main board Lightning Helix. That's what I think, but let's see how it all plays out.
Round matchup that's going to decide how night 2 starts here in week 4 in the Modern Streamers League. Sean Sakery is joined by Yama Killer himself, Gal Schlesinger off the West Coast. Gal, how you doing this evening? And is Team Fire finally happy to have some representation on the stream? I think Team Ice has been hogging ever since we had Cat on in week 1.
Well, it's going great, and it does feel good to represent the team. You know, showing that our team also has some commentators as well, and being able to show our knowledge of the format just as well as Team Ice.
We'll see if you can get things started hot for Team Fire here in round 1. NobleMurloc is somebody who needs to get off to a good start for Team Ice. Noble hasn't had a win yet in the Modern Streamers League. We'll see if this matchup tonight against the Jeskai combo deck featuring Saheeli is the prescription for him to get a win here in week 4. Murloc on Zuburn, and we're watching from Team Ice's perspective. Of course, Murloc, easily the most entertaining on-camera personality as you just watch him there in the host box off to our left. He's going to wear his heart on his sleeve and let you know what he's feeling at each part of the match. And as this one starts to open up, Gal, do you like where Team Fire is in this matchup? What's making you nervous as you see NobleMurloc start to roll out all of this quick battlefield presence that he can bring to bear?
Well, I do think the Jeskai Saheeli deck is favored in this matchup due to the fact that it has an instant combo to be able to win the game at any point. But it is rough because of the fact that Burn can always just leave up 1 mana, and a Lightning Bolt can disrupt the combo very easily. It's very hard for them to win without the combo. But they do have a lot of creature-based removal spell, which NobleMurloc is on a lot of creatures in his Burn list today. But what's good about his hand right now is that he has 2 Eidolons, so even if they do have a lot of creature removal spells for NobleMurloc, he's at least getting 2 damage out of each of these Eidolons at the very least.
Repeal, going to put it back into his hand and cycle the card here for Capolo, his adversary in round 1. Capolo has been very good with this sort of crazy cat lady deck, as it were. We'll see if he can continue his ways for Team Fire, who are behind 18-17 in the match wins coming into night 2 of week 4 here in the Modern Streamers League. Gal, you mentioned it. The instant speed threat of Lightning Bolt is great for the Zuburn deck to hold up against Saheeli combo. But right now, Murloc's looking at a hand of all sorceries, and he's just going to have to bring a lot of pressure, or at least whatever he can, as he's going to hold back on the wooded foothills and maybe represent that Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, right now it seemed like until this Path Exile that Capolo didn't have much removal spells, as he let the Wild Nacatl hit him at least 1 time. But now, at least with the Path and maybe a Snapcaster Mage could be coming up forward for a Snapcaster Path on the Wild Nacatl next turn, it seems like he may be able to stabilize this board, but at such a low life total as I guess he's going down to 9 this turn, it's going to be rough for him even to have enough time to combo, let alone be worried about the ability to combo through a Lightning Bolt.
Murloc looking at his hand. Does he want to go for maximum pressure here? He yields the sorcery speed Skewer for the alternate cost after the damage from Wild Nacatl. This is going to put Capolo down to 6, and with neither piece of the combo already on the board for Capolo, I don't think NobleMurloc has to worry about being comboed outright here. Key Spell Pierce is going to keep Capolo 42 at 9, but 9 still a dangerous life total with the Nacatl already on board, and we see the burn in Murloc's hand.
Yeah, that Spell Pierce was very, very key for Capolo to have. It made it so it turned a 2-turn clock, at least with the Wild Nacatl, into 3 turns, as well as with NobleMurloc having now 5 or 6 lands even. The Spell Pierce was going to be very hard pressed to find a target, and being able to get that, get at least 1 spell with it at a crucial point was very important in this match, I feel.
The Zuburn deck kind of flooding out right now. 6 lands here for Murloc. He'll start with the Lava Spike. He's going to ask the questions of Capolo. What do you got? Am I going to win right here?
Yeah, and now with the Eidolon, it's making it even harder for, if he doesn't have exactly a removal spell right now, he's going to be taking another 2 damage from the Wild Nacatl. It looks like a Snapcaster Mage is going to come down before the Eidolon to stop him from taking 2 from the Snap and 2 from the Path that I presume is going to be on this Eidolon or on this Nacatl. But now we've got the Searing Blaze coming down. It's going to be very rough for him to stay alive if it resolves, putting him at 3 life.
It'll deal with the Snapcaster Mage and put Capolo to 3. Not long for this world, though, is the Wild Nacatl. And it's going to be Capolo trying to stabilize at 3. But now he's going to have to work his way through the Eidolon. And Eidolon does 2 damage each time. So he's going to have to be very judicious with what spell he tries to dispense here, Gal.
Yeah, with only, I believe, a couple spells costing more than 3 in his deck, even removing the Eidolon will put him down to 1 life. And with NobleMurloc having this draw step as well as a Sunbaked Canyon, it seems very hard-pressed for Capolo, unless he gets very lucky here to find himself out of this situation.
NobleMurloc went from posing for the win to shaking his head at drawing yet another land, but you mentioned the Sunbaked Canyon. Did these style of decks, in your mind, benefit most from the other color pairings besides green-white getting their version of Horizon Canopy?
I do believe Burn actually got a lot from these Canopy lands being printed. Being able to put 4 lands that both fix your mana in your deck as well as draw you cards, which the biggest problem with Burn was being flooded out. And now when 4 of your lands turn into new cards, it greatly increased the ability of its deck to win.
Trigger goes on the stack for Teferi, and that's going to do it. NobleMurloc celebrating with the chair dance as he picks up the win for Team Ice, and he'll go up 1-0 here in the opening round against Capolo 42. Sean Sechrist along with Yama Killer, Gal Schlesinger this evening here on the Modern Streamers League as they sideboard for this matchup. Gal, how's your stream been going? I know you're taking time away from school and you've been working as a full-time streamer lately. Things seem to be looking up for you. Congratulations on the move.
Yeah, thank you very much. Streaming's been going great recently. Been growing all my viewership numbers, followers, subscribers, and everything, and really been liking playing Magic 30, 40 hours a week, getting to show everyone both my skills in Magic as well as being able to play with others or give others entertainment from my playing. That's been a very great experience to be able to do that 5-6 days a week now.
It's kind of like being locked in an ice cream store and you've got your own scooper. You know, it's great. But do you ever worry that you might not love ice cream as much after you just are sort of eating it all the time?
I thought maybe that would be the fact, but at least 1 month in, I'm still loving ice cream just as much as I've always had, as well as being able to switch around, being able to play, especially in Magic, different formats, different decks. It's really helped to break up the monotony sometimes of just, if I only had to eat vanilla ice cream every day for months and months and months, maybe I couldn't do it, but being able to eat chocolate, banana, strawberry, it's helped out a lot.
You're on the West Coast. What time are you usually streaming?
I usually stream from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
All right. You can catch Yama Killer. He's on Hardened Scales for the first half of the Modern Streamers League. We'll see him again with that deck next week, right here in Week 5. Game 2 underway. NobleMurloc. I think if you're the Zoo Burn deck, you know something very important after taking Game 1. You're going to get one of these games on the play if you don't win Game 2. I think that incentivizes sometimes riskier hands, and we've seen NobleMurloc make that decision in previous weeks here on the Modern Streamers League, but this hand looks pretty good. He's got a couple of recursive threats in the Wild Nacatls. He's got the Rift Bolt that he can use to turn up the tempo. He's got Skewer the Critics. So he's got some pieces right now, and we see his opponent, Capolo 42, he's just been passive developing his mana base here in the early turns.
Yeah, it's going to be really important to see if Capolo can deal with these early Wild Nacatls. If he can't, then it's going to be smooth sailing for NobleMurloc. But if he hits something like a Lightning Helix here, both taking out a threat as well as gaining 3 life, it's going to be really important. And it does look like he's going to have the Lightning Helix. And this not only takes away a potential 3 damage spell in Wild Nacatl, but gains him 3 life. So it's more like a 2 to 3 card advantage from that, I would say.
Coming out with the second Wild Nacatl is NobleMurloc, and unable to spin the wheel on the Skewer the Critics here for the alternate mana cost, as he didn't deal any damage to his opponent this turn. So he'll just suspend Rift Bolt, I believe, and hope to not keep drawing these lands. He did get Game 1, but he was mana flooded throughout. We just didn't see many great answers in the hands of Capolo for Team Fire. And right now, Capolo's setting up with the Serum Visions.
Yeah. Well, I do think it is important for NobleMurloc to have these creatures as recursive damage, especially now with the opening of a Lightning Helix. He's going to need to get a lot of mileage out of these creatures, even though it's very hard against the removal-heavy decks of Capolo. And also drawing these 2 lands in these first 2 draw steps really hurt NobleMurloc's chances for getting this game, but he's definitely not out of it just yet.
And we really haven't seen the most aggressive starts possible for Murloc's deck. He's got 4 Swift Spear in the deck. He's got the 4 Goblin Guide. He's kept 2 openers with neither of those anywhere to be seen. Still was able to piece it together in game 1. Let's see what this looks like in game 2 as the Skewer of the Critics is going to come down. That'll put Capolo to 14 after the attack. And a second Skewer of the Critics, it'll put him to 12, or to 11, rather.
Yes. What's going to be really important to see now from Capolo's side is, does he have both a land and a Snapcaster Mage? Because if he can get a land and a Snapcaster Mage, he not only deals with the Wild Nacatl, he also gets to gain 3 life from this Lightning Helix. It looks like he has Anger of the Gods, which deals with the Wild Nacatl, which was NobleMurloc's only recursive form of damage. And with only the lands in hand, it's going to be a tough way forward for NobleMurloc.
Yeah, Murloc right there just sunk back into his chair. You could see the visual. And right now, if you're Capolo, you know this is a Zoo Burn deck on the other side that runs land light in its construction. You have to think these cards are action. Capolo would probably tell you he would love it if he knew it was just lands in the hand for Murloc. And the Lightning Bolt off the top, that'll allow the cycle of the Sunbait Canyon. Now some burn piling up in Murloc's hand, but these are just one-use burn spells, not the repetitive threat of a creature. And we'll see if Murloc can string this together.
Yeah, those 2 3-mana burn spells that he drew were very important to getting him back into this game, I feel, as Capolo was at 11 and he didn't have any damage, but now he's at a virtual 5 life now, and he gets another draw step. If it's another 3 damage, puts him down to 2, and it's very close for just lethal to be coming from the hand of NobleMurloc.
So the Felidar Guardian now, 1/2 of the combo, is a Saheeli coming up. Rift Bolt is going to come off to put Capolo at 5.
Yeah, I think NobleMurloc was a little bit hasty with the Lightning Bolt. If he wasn't willing to play it out while Capolo was tapped out, just playing it out when the Felidar Guardian came down, giving the threat of the combo and not being able to hold it in hand for the Saheeli seemed a little hasty with the Lightning Bolt.
That you can see that expressive face of NobleMurloc. He knows that he's just a passenger. We've seen this happen a couple times in the Modern Streamers League, where the hand that we're seeing on stream, which this week is being hosted by Team Ice, shows nothing. And it's just nervous moments right now for NobleMurloc. Not too badly, since he's up 1-0 here in game 2. He knows he has game 3 if things go south, but not much in the way of action. NobleMurloc, Gal, has really seen an statistically unlikely amount of lands, I feel like, here in these first 2 games.
Yeah, I would agree so as well. But it seems like he drew Rift Bolt here. It seems like Capolo either doesn't have the combo or is scared of whatever NobleMurloc could have as his last card. While we know it's a land, Capolo definitely doesn't. The Snapcaster Mage is going to be very rough, getting him another 3 life, putting NobleMurloc even another draw step away from being able to find lethal here.
And this gives Capolo 42 some presence on the ground. If Murloc just draws a Goblin Guide off the top or another Wild Nacatl, that doesn't look nearly as good with Guardian and Snapcaster on the other side.
Yep. I think NobleMurloc's best possible draws here now is this Exquisite Firecrafts, both because it could deal with Felidar Guardian if he so chooses, but also being able to be uncountered by something like Force of Negation from Capolo. So we'll see if he ends up drawing some important spells or ends up just drawing lands, which he seems to be very adept at recently.
Back-to-back Exquisite Firecrafts would certainly be a way to end this game as we look at what's possible for NobleMurloc. Just 1 Exquisite Firecraft in the main deck. He did have 2 in the board, and I believe he elected to go with the additional one during sideboarding. We'll take another look if we have a game 3, as NobleMurloc going with the Rift Bolt to the face. Remand, going to put it back in hand. And right now, that's an interesting spot. NobleMurloc can go 6 full to the face, but it would take all of his mana in play. And if he deploys the mountain, then obviously Capolo 42 knows that the way is clear.
Yeah, I'm somewhat surprised he went for the Suspend again when he could just play it out straight up and even play the mountain out to play around Spell Pierce. But maybe he's thinking that just try to tax the mana as much in the upkeep and then throw all the spells at him during the next turn if he draws another 3 damage burn spell.
Now NobleMurloc's life is at 3. So this turn cycle is going to set it up, and the lightning bolt off the top for Capolo42. This is some of the reach that the Jeskai deck has when it turns into a tempo-based game. Murloc, just for the rub-ins, wants to show his own lightning bolt, but that's going to get him nowhere, and we're off to game 3, Gal.
Yeah, I did not expect to see the tempo game plan coming out of Jeskai's Saheeli with all the burn and fast damage that the burn deck had. But if NobleMurloc continues to just have some clunky draws and drawing a couple too many lands, then I could see some of these Snap Lightning Helix getting him able to play a tempo game and be able to burn NobleMurloc out.
Yeah, and that's just part of the advantage that I feel like the Jeskai deck has in this matchup. The ability to go snap on, we saw the Lightning Helix come up big in that game, as well as sort of interact on the ground and threaten the combo at the same time. And we saw the reach at the end for Capolo42 to close it out. And this is just, it feels like Jeskai, even though we saw NobleMurloc get game 1, it feels like this is a good matchup for Jeskai. Not unwinnable by any means for Zuburn, especially on the play. And now we're going to see Goblin Guide Swiftspear style hands here in game 3. And this is a great opening.
Yeah. I really like the openings where he has like 3-4 creatures. It really taxes the potential early removal spells that Capolo has. But with this Anger of the Gods, it makes it a little bit more rough to be able to just throw out a bunch of creatures. And he knows about it now because of the Goblin Guide. So we'll see how he ends up playing around it, how many creatures he commits, and what ends up happening.
And what is the balance? Because NobleMurloc certainly wants this game to be as short as possible, and he knows he's on the play. So if he goes with both creatures this turn, they'll get at least, you would think, 1 swing in. And that might be all he needs with Riftbolt, Lava Spike, Eidolon in his hand.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he starts slow rolling these creatures, only putting 2 down here, especially the haste creatures. Wait for the Anger of the Gods, wait for whatever removal spells he ends up having, and then slowly putting out more creatures at post sweeper with the Anger of the Gods.
Force of Negation costs Capolo 2 cards, but he's going to now dispense the Lightning Bolt. That'll remove the Swiftspear. And I think Capolo has really dedicated himself to keeping his life total as high as possible. He knows he can now threaten to unleash that Anger of the Gods here in the mid part of this game to clear up the board before heading into his possible combo turns a little bit later. If he can put together, say, Snapcaster Mage with a 3rd or 4th mana, that gives him a lot of flexibility. And a second Lightning Bolt to clean up the Goblin Guy for the trigger. NobleMurloc can just give the thumbs up. He wants the Eidolon now, but this game suddenly doesn't feel, and a 3rd Lightning Bolt as Capolo is just raining Lightning Bolts on NobleMurloc. And this is where we talked about the reach in the Jeskai shell, Gal, gives them the ability to keep the battlefield clean or to end the game in a flurry of lightning like we saw in game 2. And right now, Capolo's using it much more control-ish defensively rather than trying to end this game.
Yeah, him having triple Lightning Bolt has been very rough for NobleMurloc. Both makes it so if he doesn't have Pat, since they weren't Pat deck styles, he didn't get to at least get lands out of his deck with them. Now with the Snapcaster Lightning Bolt, he's just had all the answers for these creatures and didn't even have to use his Anger of the Gods that they saw on the top. Those Goblin Guides are really giving him lands, which it seems like he didn't even have any more lands before that, is really rough as well, negating the 2-for-1 nature of the Force of Negation that was used early on. So this has been a very, even though I feel like NobleMurloc had a very good start, Capolo's been keeping up with it all the way through.
And something else that's important here is Capolo42, his life is still at a healthy 11. Now the late Lightning Bolt off the Snapcaster Mage comes down, clears off the Eidolon, takes Capolo down to 9. But Murloc with just the one threat in hand, as he's got Wild Nicodle, and that doesn't look good in the face of Teferi. Yeah,
Teferi both is stopping now the Rift Bolt that he had on Suspend, making it so it doesn't even deal any damage. Now he's got the Snapcaster with a Lightning Bolt, potentially for the Wild Nicodle, and it's really looking like Capolo's going to be running away with this one at this point.
Goblin God gives NobleMurloc some hope. Do you force the Anger of the Gods next turn from the hand of Capolo, or are you just happy running these creatures out one at a time, chipping in for a couple points of damage, and maybe trying to put together some burn spells of your own to finish this?
At this point, I would be At this point, I'd be very happy to just wait out on the creatures because he knows about the Snapcaster that was sent back to his hand, and he can just Snapcaster Lightning Bolt one of them. Whereas this, it has the Anger of the Gods, sweeps the whole board, and now he still has a Snapcaster Bolt for another creature.
Murloc forces the issue out of cards, and his opponent at an annoying 7 life. At least 6 would give you back-to-back Lightning Bolts off the top, but that 1 life, barring the use of, say, a fetch land, is going to be kind of a thorn in Murloc's side as he looks to pick off Capolo 42 here in round 1 of our second night here in week 4 of the Modern Streamers League.
Yeah, now with his opponent having the Teferi out, it's going to be very hard to catch something with a Searing Blaze, and it seems like NobleMurloc or Capolo may even be trying to just burn out NobleMurloc at this point with the 4th Lightning Bolt being found and him having another Snapcaster Mage in his hand from the Teferi bounce earlier.
Now that's an additional 6 if he wants to go Snapcaster Mage, Lightning Bolt, Teferi, return Snapcaster Mage, Snapcaster Lightning Bolt in the next turn. So NobleMurloc, I think, has to play this game like he's added essentially 3 life.
Yep, and not being able to respond with the Searing Blaze at any point because of the Teferi out makes it even harder for him to interact with what looks like going to be on his next end step, Snapcaster Lightning Bolt, return it onto his turn, Snapcaster Lightning Bolt for lethal.
Yeah, and we saw the Lightning Helix there, and that could mean the end of this game.
Yes.
Lob Spike. Yep. Not going to be good enough here.
It looks like he's not going to have enough burn, and on the end step, we're going to see Snapcaster Lightning Bolt, and then on his turn, Snapcaster Lightning Bolt again.
This is a key draw step. Atarka's Command, that just doesn't feel good in this spot, I don't think, for NobleMurloc, the way this game has shaped up.
Yeah. It ended up being a little bit awkward with the Searing Blaze because of the Teferi, and now him drawing a little bit too many lands and then not being able to quite have enough lands for his spells because he had to spend the mana to crack the Sunbaked Canyon. His hands just were a little bit too awkward for this matchup, and Capolo seemed like he had all the right spells at the right time with the 4 Lightning Bolts in this game.
We're going to be tied up 18-18 between Team Fire and Team Ice as Capolo 42 on Jeskai Saheeli combo is going to take down Zoo Burn. NobleMurloc for Team Ice got off to a race of a start, taking game 1, but games 2 and 3 out of the sideboard. Too much efficient removal for the Jeskai Saheeli deck as they're able to take apart the Zoo Burn deck in this opening round tonight. Gal, interesting matchup, but it was one I think that just played to the strengths of the Jeskai Saheeli deck all throughout.
Yeah, I expected something along those lines of a lot of removal spells hitting a lot of creatures early on, but I didn't expect the quadruple Lightning Bolt that Capolo had in game 4 to close out just that easily.
Yeah, I think he needs to call that hand the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects that situation to be the way it plays out. Round 1 goes to Team Fire, and we are all tied up 18-18 with 4 more rounds to come. Here, round 2 is next. We'll see Matt Hurley on his 48% Jund deck, where he's using both Harsh Mentor and Hex Drinker, take on Sodek. Sodek has been one of the absolute pillars for Team Ice here early. This is going to be key for Team Fire to see if they can pick up back-to-back wins. Of course, the Modern Streamers League is brought to you by Card Hoarder and Card Kingdom. Any of the technology that you see here on the Modern Streamers League, well, it can be yours. If you want to play online, hit up Card Hoarder for all your needs. And if you're playing at your LGS or at a larger event, Card Kingdom will make sure you get everything that you need shipped to you on time for your event. You want to take the latest technology with you, Card Hoarder and Card Kingdom, no matter how you're playing your modern Magic. This is the Modern Streamers League Round 2. It comes up next.
Plague Engineer can actually bring out, and Plague Engineer naming Bloodghast can make it so Bloodghast doesn't do anything. A Bloodghast comes back and deals absolutely no damage. So the Scavenging Ooze and the Plague Engineer is what will be stopping Dredge on the main board. Post board, I already mentioned those 2 Surgicals, the 1 Spellbomb, the 1 Anger, and the 1 Ashiok, with maybe even the other Plague Engineer. On Dredge's side, Dredge is just going to be looking to do Dredge things and make sure you have at least 1 Dredger in hand so you can discard another one just in case there is a graveyard wipe. But the only graveyard wipes that Jund really has is that 1 Spellbomb and that 1 Ashiok on the side. So main board Dredge should be pretty clear to go ahead and do very, very Dredge things. So let's see how this plays out. My feeling is that it's going to be favoring Dredge just a little bit.
Can Dredge take this down? The favorite in the forecast of doom is Sodek for Team Ice. We'll see if Matt Hurley for Team Fire can fight back. I know that when he texted me this week, he was excited for this match. We'll see if it actually goes down the way that he hopes it does with, as he calls it, his 48% Jund deck that he's brought to the league for this first half of the Modern Streamers League.
48% Jund.
Yeah, 48% Jund. It's 14% in his hand, it feels like a lot of times. Along with the same 2, Mike Goldenberg, will be rejoined by Yamakiller, Gal Schlesinger in just a bit. And we see one thing that's interesting with Sodek's list, Mike. He opts for the one-of Hogak over the 4th prized Amalgam. Doesn't seem to be slowing him down. He's got an Amalgam in hand. He's got the Bloodghasts in hand. And we already know that he's got the Shriekhorn here on turn 1 to get going.
Right. Now, he needs a looting or a reunion to actually get those out of his hand into the graveyard. So I don't actually love this hand coming from Sodek's side. But these are open deck lists, and Sodek knows he has a little bit of time against Jund to kind of set up, to kind of draw into that Faithless Looting or the Cathartic Reunion. And granted, even if he had one in his hand, it didn't mean that it wouldn't get Thoughtseized or Inquisitioned away, which could have been kind of what he was banking on there.
Yeah, Thoughtseizing or Inquisitioning the Dredge deck is an interesting exercise because most of their cards you actually don't want to take. You're actually just trying to hit those looters, and there's a limited sort of window of prime use because we know Faithless Looting, it can be activated from the graveyard as well. So I'm always interested when Jund decks post-board decide how much hand disruption they want to keep in based on how good it is. And you see Matt Hurley going for the Inquisition now against Sodek, and Sodek's really going to give him a limited number of things to take, and I don't think Sodek's going to be unhappy with anything that goes to the graveyard.
No, there was nothing good to take right there. He took the Amalgam because Bloodghast is the enabler, Stinkweed's an enabler, which is the only choice that Matt really had there. Now, I thought Thoughtseize and discard against Dredge, it's kind of a mixed bag. I've certainly been on the Thoughtseize, and when I've Thoughtseized a Dredge player and they revealed a hand of only Dredgers and said, thank you. And I was like, oh, you're welcome, opponent.
Narcomoeba coming into play as the Jund deck has done quite a bit of damage to itself here early in the game, just trying to find some purchase against this Dredge deck.
That is something that I've noticed playing with Matt, and kind of like him and I did a lot of testing with the Sultai list almost a year ago now. He does like to fetch shock quite a bit. He always tells me Modern has such painful mana bases, and I was like, you don't have to shock every time, you know that. But I know he's a legacy guy at heart, so I know that he's used to having those underground seas and those dual lands that don't have any drawback.
He's going with the Bloodbraid Elf into Thoughtseize, probably the last card in his deck that he wanted to see Cascade off of Bloodbraid Elf, and I think he's just going to opt not to cast it to not help out Sodek.
I actually think I might have cast that there. He knew about the Creeping Chill in hand, and if Sodek can get to 4, we know he's about to have, we know he has another land in hand, and Matt does too because of that Life from the Loam, putting that Gemstone Mine in his hand. Thoughtseize there could have actually saved 1 life point because Sodek could just hardcast Creeping Chill just to deal 3 straight to face. That I feel like that Thoughtseize was a really bad cascade, but I feel like it still could have been played there.
Interesting that he doesn't want to get in with the Stinkweed Imp, which also has flying. He's going to get in with the Narcomoeba and the double prized amalgam. I believe that Matt has one free block with the Tarmogoyf. He can trade with the Bloodbraid if he wants to, but he's going to take one no matter what. And he does, as you mentioned, Mike, know about the Creeping Chill and the fourth land. So Team Fire has to play this right now as if they're at ostensibly, 5 life at this point.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I perfectly articulated it in the forecast of doom, but game 1 heavily favors Dredge here. Post board, I think, is when Jund can kind of catch up with cards like Anger of the Gods.
That's just a typical green-black X strategy, though, right? They're very medium in game 1, but they have some of the best tools in the format in the sideboard, depending on how they want to build it for an expected meta.
Yes. Oh, so we actually see why Sodek did not attack that Stinkweed Imp. It was because he had a Hokak in the yard, and he needed that black Convoke. He needed that black source right there. Wow, I don't see an out. 8/8 trample that alone is too much right now for the Tarmogoyf deck.
And even if there would be a game 1 damnation, now you've got the Dredgers in the yard. You've got your opponent at 7. You've got double amalgam. No game 1 Anger of the Gods to exile these creatures. And Sodek gets the concession from Team Fire and wins game 1 here in round 2. Go to the sideboards now, Saint Doom. You feel like, and you mentioned it in the forecast of doom, this is where Jund gets noticeably better. Does Sodek just want to be his best possible deck, knowing that with open information? Or are there ways that he's going to try to specifically sideboard for this matchup?
You can see here the Lightning Axe and the Abrupt Decay. He's specifically bringing in cards that kill things like Tarmogoyf and Scavenging Ooze. Probably prioritizing killing a Scavenging Ooze before a Tarmogoyf. But Tarmogoyf can be a bit of an issue. Like we saw there, a 3/4 Tarmogoyf can wall off his prized amalgams and make life pretty difficult for a Dredge player. Lightning Axe cleanly deals with that while also being an enabler and allowing Sodek to discard a Dredger. After a graveyard clear from Ashiok or from a Spellbomb, Sodek can kill Matt's Tarmogoyf and then pitch a Stinkweed Imp and get right back and rock and rolling.
It'll be interesting to see how this game 2 plays out. Tarmogoyf, you mentioned it being able to wall off prized amalgam. Modern has this sort of graph. If you looked at it, it would look like a roller coaster where Tarmogoyf has been part of the apex of creatures in the format, and at times that it's felt really outclassed in the format. Where do you think Tarmogoyf is right now in Modern?
I unfortunately think Tarmogoyf is a little outclassed. I think Goyf is actually, strangely, one of the worst cards in Green-Black X right now. We've seen Hex Drinker do a lot of work. Scavenging Ooze is really good right now. Dark Confidant, Tireless Tracker, Renin 6. These are all threats, because Renin 6 is kind of like a threat that I just think might just be better than just a big, dumb 4/5, which is really like Tarmogoyf's kind of floor is he's a 4/5. Now, in a Traverse list, he might be a 5/6 or bigger, but Tarmogoyf does get a little bit of hate right now from how much grave hate there is in Modern. When people are main decking ley lines, that means your Tarmogoyf is going to be a lot smaller.
We saw the Faithless Looting and the use of the Nihil Spellbomb as Matt elects to blow that early in this game, and now Cathartic Reunion, and this is one of the most powerful cards in the Dredge deck. It really puts 3 cards in your hand and 2 cards in the zone to where you usually want them, which is the graveyard.
Right.
Sodek on the Dredge deck, Team Ice. You're seeing his hand and the battlefield from his perspective. We'll watch it from Team Ice's perspective all week here in week 2 of the Modern Streamers League, and Team Fire will return for week 5. We'll talk a little bit about the transition from the first half to the second half coming up later tonight on the Modern Streamers League. But after week 5 next week, we will see some significant changes as to what players are bringing to Modern Streamers League.
Absolutely.
Lightning looks like it's going to get to work, and clear up the always threatening Scavenging Ooze on the other side of the board. Interesting that Matt chose to deploy the Scavenging Ooze without another green to hold up on the turn he deployed it.
I think he's kind of in trouble with his mana base right now. Jund right now has one of the most awkward mana bases of any mid-range deck I've seen, trying to cram in Ren 6 as an additional 2-drop, really overloading on the red mana. That really prohibits how much black and green mana the deck can have. Now, this Harsh Mentor doesn't do a tremendous amount here. You can see Sodek wisely not F6ing like I did in my match against Matt, and taking a needless 2 against that Harsh Mentor.
Harsh Mentor out, and I believe that's the second Scavenging Ooze.
That is Matt's last Scavenging Ooze.
He really is selling out to try and contain this graveyard. But even if he untaps with it, right now he's only showing the 1 green mana. So it's not that big of a threat as it's constituted right now for Sodek. Dredge certainly willing to play around you being able to take one thing a turn out of their graveyard.
Absolutely. Dredge, being able to dredge 3 or even more per turn makes exiling one thing from a graveyard kind of irrelevant. Here's that Harsh Mentor getting a little bit of chip damage.
So right now, Sodek at 13 as he takes the 2 from the Harsh Mentor. Harsh Mentor is a 2/2. Scavenging Ooze a natural 2/2. So that's 4 points sitting on the board. Of course, the Bloodghast can't block. So Sodek, if Matt has something like Bloodbraid Elf here, may have his window closing on him.
Or even just that Raging Ravine with that 5th land. Now, Bloodghast cannot block, but I think this Harsh Mentor is doing a lot more work behind the scenes than we're actually... It's already dealt 2 damage. One of the ways that Sodek has right now to deal with Harsh Mentor and Scavenging Ooze is that Blast Zone. But to do that, he needs to take 4 damage to activate the Blast Zone, put it up a counter, and then to actually activate it. That's 4 damage that Harsh Mentor rolled out. That means if the Harsh Mentor swings once or twice, that's going to deal 8 to 10 damage just as one creature by itself. That is a lot of work from a little 2/2.
And I don't think Sodek's going to be alive long enough to do that because he'd have to use his entire turn to put the counter on Blast Zone, tie up all of his mana, and Matt continues to swing in. Now the second green source, he's got the ability to threaten to grow the Scavenging Ooze bigger and turn this into a 2-turn clock.
I like
Raging
Matt's
stepping back right now.
I liked Matt's play there of killing. I'm surprised he still has the Fatal Pushes right here for this matchup, but killing the Bloodghast and then eating it right away means there's one less thing that can convoke for Hogak, which I thought was a pretty neat line. I don't know if I like keeping in Fatal Pushes against this deck, especially with Ren 6. We can just use that minus ping effect to also kill. Like the same exact work against a Narcomoeba or against a Bloodghast.
With an end of turn Scavenging Ooze activation to eat a creature, we know that Matt has the mana to activate the Raging Ravine. He's got enough power on board to kill on this next turn, and Sodek, he's thinking about what he's going to life from the loan back. He's going to be short on mana, trying to defend himself, and what was a slow start by Jund in this game, Mike, suddenly has turned the corner, and Matt's threatening to even this up at 1 apiece and slam the door shut.
Absolutely, and Sodek's forced here to play that Narcomoeba just to block Scavenging Ooze, which still that Harsh Mentor is going to be doing work, preventing that Treecorn from really being activated.
See if Matt wants to target something in the graveyard with his Scavenging Ooze this turn. And he will activate it. So the Ooze grows to a 4/4. Raging Ravine attacks for the first time as a 4/4, I believe.
Yes.
So this would necessitate a blocker on the 4/4. And now the big haymaker, Ashiok, coming down out of the board. And Sodek, you just saw his body language get very tight.
There is no coming back from this particular spot. Scavenging Ooze in play. Harsh Mentor being surprisingly relevant. That's Matt's pet card he put into this deck, and it's been pretty good so far in this league. I know it was good against me. It's good right here, just stopping that Shriekhorn. Because if Sodek wants to rebuild his graveyard, he has to activate that and take 2, which 2 doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're at 6 against a deck that has lightning bolts, it adds up quick.
A hard cast Narcomoeba out of the hand going to come down again for Sodek. But this time, I don't think it's enough. Harsh Mentor can get in along with the Raging Ravine, and not enough mana to both put a counter on Blast Zone and activate it on this turn cycle. And I think Matt's going to slam the door closed with Jun, and we're going to be going to a third game in the next turn. Mm-hmm. I don't see any outs here for Sodek.
He kept the Stinkweed Imp in hand. In case anyone's wondering why he did that and didn't deploy the Stinkweed Imp to block the Scavenging Ooze, if he did that, then Ashiok would just exile after combat. He'd still have to chump block that Harsh Mentor, and then he wouldn't have any Dredgers. This way, since Ashiok works at sorcery speed, if Sodek draws a Faithless Looting, he can still dredge here. Or not a Faithless, a Cathartic Reunion. He can still dredge here.
Sodek going to activate the Shriekhorn, take 2 from the Harsh Mentor, and the Liliana just with absolute nail in the coffin. Liliana can go upstairs, she can go downstairs, sacrifice the only blocker, and Jun just pushing its advantage here in the post-board games in Game 2.
It's Creeping Chill is exactly what Sodek needed, but I don't think it's enough. Nope, Scavenging Ooze can eat it in response, and that way, if you exile it and it doesn't allow it to exile itself, it doesn't actually trigger, and there's no Lightning Helix effect.
And that's great rules knowledge from Matt as he jumped on that to save himself the life and make sure that Sodek can't sneak past with that trigger here in Game 2. So Game 2 goes to Team Fire in the hands of Matt Hurley and his 48% Jun deck. We'll see who takes Game 3 as we are right now all evened up at 18 matches apiece for Team Fire and Team Ice. Sean Secrease along with the Saint Doom, Mike Goldenberg. You can support each team's charity that they're playing for here in Season 1 of the MSL just below us. Team Fire is playing for A21, which looks to end human trafficking around the world. And Team Ice is playing for the Cancer Research Institute, looking to research and end all forms of cancer all around the world. Make a donation, whatever you can do. Support your favorite team, support both teams, support both great endeavors, and you help to support the great modern technology seek and find, let's say, that we have going on here with the Modern Streamers League. So many great angles being covered here in Season 1, the first half, and we'll see how these players change what they bring to bear in the second half. After Week 5 next week, players will be allowed to switch decks. I imagine some might stay with their preferred weapons, but still others will bring different decks to the table. We're not going to ask our player right now to reveal his hand. I don't want to tip anything off for Team Ice as they're very close with Team Fire, tied up at 18-18. But I'm looking forward to see how those decks might change heading into the second leg of the Modern Streamers League. Game 3 just about upon us. Sodek thinking about a mulligan. He's going to keep his opener. Why not? You've got the best card in the deck in Faithless Looting. He has the Shriekhorn for the backup, and Saint Doom, he's off to the races here on the play in Game 3.
He absolutely is. This is exactly what he's looking for. He's got 2 enablers in his hand. He's got things to pitch, including that Stinkweed. Surgical Extraction on looting.
Sodek throwing his hands up on the camera.
I usually personally target the enablers, the Stinkweed Imp, the something to that effect, or even an Amalgam or a Bloodghast, but just going for that looting, that got a free Thoughtseize effect too and ripped another looting out of Sodek's hand. Sodek just went from having a lot of enablers to having just that Shriekhorn, and he's still got the Stinkweed Imp in the graveyard, so he's still got plenty of time. Oh, Sodek's going for the natural draw, trying to hit another land here.
Shriekhorn's going to set him up with land going to the graveyard along with, it looks like, Prized Amalgam. He's got the Dredger in the Stinkweed Imp if he wants to go that way. What's the comfort level for Dredge? 1 land is certainly 2 or 3 is plenty. Do we expect Sodek to keep taking natural draws? Tarmogoyf now for the Jun deck as Matt Hurley gets on board looking to steal Game 3.
I would like to have 2 lands as a Dredge player. That way you can cast Life from the Loam, which lets you get more lands, so you can keep triggering Bloodghasts landfall trigger whenever Bloodghast dies. And if you can do that, then you can enable your prized amalgams and put them right into play. And once those are in play, then it's really easy to cast a Hogak.
We see that Sodek holding the sideboard card Abrupt Decay in order to take down these Tarmogoyfs, but stranded on one land. He's now looking at double Tarmogoyf on the other side of the board, and that red mana is not going to help him with the Abrupt Decay. He'll take another Shriekhorn activation, and Jund's pressure in the face of a land light draw from Dredge is threatening an upset in my mind here.
Yes, but that mountain did get him life from the loam, which will get him a swamp off that Bloodstained Mire. So he does have Abrupt Decay online next turn, but that is 8 damage coming in. Without that Creeping Shield, that would have been potentially door closing.
So Sodek pumps his life back up to 19. He'll feel comfortable there. He also has the Blast Zone in hand if he wants to go that route. The fetch from Jund, as Matt Hurley for Team Fire looks to put Team Fire in front. We're tied at 18 match wins apiece through 3.5 weeks of the first half of the Modern Streamers League.
As a Team Ice representative, I feel pretty confident here because Team Ice has never lost on a Wednesday.
You have never lost on a Wednesday while playing. I was nervous about you making your Monday night debut, but that went okay for you as well. 4-0 in the Modern Streamers League for these things too. We'll see Sspiderspace later tonight at 3-0 on Team Ice. He's the only other player that can stay undefeated after 4 weeks in the Modern Streamers League, but he needs a win tonight, and he's facing off against Susurrus. So that's going to be an epic battle coming up in round 5.
Absolutely. That is Chalice versus Chalice. That's going to be some really neat high-level magic going on that's going to be really fun to watch, really fun to learn from.
Now Sodek trying to think his way out. He's on 9. Has the Abrupt Decay. The activation. This is threatening lethal, so Sodek's going to have to deploy the Abrupt Decay.
Here's that Raging Ravine.
And Sodek shaking his head as he looks at it, and Sodek shakes his head, and he's going to look at the surprising L to Jund in my mind here in round 2 as Team Fire wins back-to-back matches to open up night 2 of week 4 here on the Modern Streamers League. Matt Hurley, we heard from him in our Extra Turns feature a couple of weeks ago, and in the future, he may join us for some analyst work as well. Getting the win for Team Fire. Green Black X. Mike, you mentioned it in the Forecast of Doom. We see these decks at their best after sideboarding, and that was what won it as Matt took both sideboard games against Dredge.
Yeah, that was a really interesting... That was a really interesting way that played out, in my opinion. I really think those sideboard cards were key. Ashiok really shut the door there on Sodek. It really, really did. And Scavenging Ooze, I was wondering why Matt was willing to play out that Scavenging Ooze without having any green mana. You actually asked that, Sean. And he was willing to do it because he had another Scavenging Ooze in his hand, which really taxed Sodek's resources because he only has so many cards that can kill a creature.
So the win goes to Team Fire as Jund, 48% Jund with some spicy cards in the main deck from Matt Hurley gets the win. Can Team Fire make it 3 in a row, or will Team Ice battle back and look to split some of the middle rounds on the night tonight? 5 rounds of Modern here in the Modern Streamers League this evening. We've seen round 1 already come down as a win for Capolo 42. Round 2, Matt Hurley picks up the win. Team Fire 2-0 on the night. Can Team Ice battle back? We'll see Francisco. He'll take on Visquis. Visquis 87 coming up next. This is going to be a wonderful contrast in styles between the Titan deck and the big colorless creature deck, as the Eldrazi will try to get loose for Visquis 87 coming up. Gal Schlesinger is with us all night long. You saw him play on Monday night as Yama Killer. He was undefeated prior to his matchup with the Saint Doom. We'll have the Forecast of Doom ahead of round 3 coming up. This is the Modern Streamers League.
Welcome back to the Forecast of Doom. This is Mike Goldenberg. I have a very neat forecast here. This is Karn deck versus Karn deck. Very simple. These are two decks that are very good at accelerating mana, and what they're doing here is pushing forward Karn. Now, the Eldrazi Tron deck has a lot of interaction with Thought-Knot Seer and cards like that, but Amulet Titan Karn has really, really big prime times, which make Reality Smashers seem kind of tiny. Now, the really interesting cards here and kind of the interesting matchup pieces that I have and that I particularly see here, as someone who's played this matchup a little bit, Chalice of the Void on 1 stops Ancient Stirrings, stops Amulet, stops sometimes Secure Scouts unless it's a Cavern, but Chalice on 0 stops Summoner's Pact Chains, which when prime time comes down, you can get a Tolaria West, then that can get you another Summoner's Pact and get you another Titan. Chalice of the Void on 0 stops that entirely. However, Karn Plus kind of kills a Chalice on 0, which can be a really nice interaction fighting back from the Amulet Titan side. The key cards in this matchup, I think, is if Eldrazi Tron can land an All Is Dust, or if Eldrazi Tron can land a really timely Thought-Knot Seer or a Bridge to really stop any aggro from the Amulet Titan deck. I think that can really help the Eldrazi Tron deck. I do think Amulet Titan is favored here, but you might expect that from me being one of the mods in the Amulet Titan Discord. I really do love Amulet, and I think this is a really fun matchup. I do think the 6/6 Giant Trampler is just a little bit better than the 5/5 Reality Smasher. That's my opinion. That's how I think it's going to go, but let's see how it all plays out.
Who got the most out of Karn? That's the question at the end of this match that will tell us who wins it. Sean Seacrease along with Yama Killer, Gal Schlesinger. Thank you for hanging out with us this evening. Gal, as you break down the differences in these two decks, Eldrazi Tron with Karn, on the side of Visquis 87 and Karnulet, which we're going to see in the hands of Francisco, our favorite drummer here in the Modern Streamers League. What are your thoughts on how these two decks really differ from each other as they try to both leverage Karn?
I think both, it's going to be a large dependent on who's on the play. Like, as we can see, FP has the Amulet of Vigor here into a quick Azusa. We're going to see if he can create any mana off of that and see what he can do with it. But also, it's a large dependent on what can both players get with their Karn. As we can both see, they can both get a Mycosynth Lattice Lock, make it so their opponent doesn't get to play the game. We can see Karn from the Amulet side can get a Engineered Explosives or a Pithing Needle to both stop an opposing Karn if need be, or just get rid of some Chalice of the Voids that are on the board. Whereas VQ can get a Sorcerer's Spyglass, can stop some of the lands like Slayer Strongholds from hasting a Titan, or can get a Crucible of Worlds and start just ghost quartering the Amulet player every single turn.
The Amulet on turn 1 from Francisco, now looking to leverage that as he gets ready to start an Azusa pattern.
Mm-hmm. Now, Francisco's going to be able to get a lot of mana here, going up to 4 mana for the next turn with his 2 land drop extras that he's getting this turn. And that's going to, if he finds a Primeval Titan for next turn, either through a Summoner's Pact. Oh, actually, because of the Dismember now. Actually, no, still with the Amulet, he'll still have 6 mana if he finds a Titan or a Pact to start going off and doing what his deck does.
Francisco has to be worried, though, I think, with just double lands in his hand. He's got all the mana that he needs, but he has absolutely no action right now and no way to impact the board. He's rubbing the hands together as a Matter Reshaper comes down on the side of Visquis.
Mm-hmm. You can see him being a little upset with him not drawing a action spell of some sort now with only just mana, not much else to do. It's up to his deck to give him something to do and not die to just a lowly Matter Reshaper at this point.
Waste is a super type basic land, so the Ghost Quarter will, in fact, allow Visquis to go for a land if Francisco elects to use it.
Yeah, he decided to get rid of the Eldrazi Temple, which is nice because he saw that he wasn't able to land a turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer with a second Temple. More than likely, he won't have an impactful spell here unless he top decked another Eldrazi Temple to play. So, and he didn't need to go after the Tron lands because he didn't see a tower into a power plant or 2 of the 3 Tron lands. So he's probably going to be disrupting him for at least a turn here, giving him even more time to find one of his 8 spells that could win him the game nearly on the spot.
Is it too dangerous to let the Eldrazi Tron player go into their first main phase and look at, is he going to drop a second piece of Tron? Maybe I want to use the Ghost Quarter then, or the possibility of giving them 4 mana with the Temple. Is that just too good as a Blast Zone comes down now for Visquis?
I think a large portion of the time, once you see the Eldrazi Temple and not the second way to get a Thought-Knot Seer out early, you have to assume they're going to turn 3 Thought-Knot Seer you in most situations. But now that we see Francisco ripping a Summoner's Pact, he's going to go get a Titan, give it haste, and get a bunch of things going for himself now.
Francisco going with the chair dance as he puts together his Titan line. And he's feeling good right now. The Walking Ballista, really kind of irrelevant with Eldrazi Tron relatively constricted on mana at this phase of the game.
Yeah. The Walking Ballista is not going to be doing much. It's interesting that he has the Blast Zone that could take out the Amulet of Vigor down the line, but I think the damage is already going to be done with him getting a hasted Titan. And we're going to have to see what lands he gets here. He may get a Simic, just double Simic Growth Chamber, pick up the Vesuva here, and set up his Tolaria West to go get another Summoner's Pact for next turn. Maybe he goes and gets... this Dismember is actually really big now that the Walking Ballista can take out the Primeval Titan. It's not something that I expected at all.
That Walking Ballista did end up having its moment in the sun and being relevant there. We were just worrying that it had gotten severely outclassed by Primetime.
Mm-hmm. Now it looks like Francisco now has not much else going on. He doesn't have the blue mana to transmute Tolaria West. The Thought-Knot Sphere does end up coming down, not hitting anything, but Francisco is now in another spot where he needs to top deck a big spell or else he's going to be in a world of hurt.
Mana Reshaper chipping in for 3. I don't think that as Francisco shaking his head, highlighting the double Dismember draw from his opponent. I've learned that in the online version of Magic, highlighting a card is your way to show disdain for it having been played against you.
For sure. I just looked at VQ's deck list, and it seems like he only has 2 Dismembers in his deck, so he's going like, he only has 2, and there's the 2 that he saw, and he's not happy about it.
Open deck list, of course, here in the Modern Streamers League. Francisco knew what he was up against, and Francisco is somebody who works out the math. We talked about that when he joined us for a previous edition of the Modern Streamers League, and obviously he's going to go for it against a deck that's got 2 Dismembers and had already shown 1. I think that's what his deck is made to do. He has to pay for the Summoner's Pact, and now he's going to kind of hand the momentum back, I think, to Visquis. But Visquis with 6, maybe 7 power on the board as Reshaper's a 3/2. Mm-hmm. But that's not really enough considering that he knows about the Tolaria West. He knows there can be, a transmute for another Summoner's Pact and how explosive this Titan deck can be.
Yeah, it is going to put Francisco under a 1 turn to rip something off the top to get himself going, because right now he's going to be put to 7 more power on the board. And this Blast Zone can even take out the Amulet, making some of his more interesting lines with Primeval Titan locked out. So we're going to see how Visquis ends up doing during his turn if he plays any more Disruption or plays even a Reality Smasher off of another land. See if he can push the pressure even more, making possibly even a Primeval Titan not out, or if he plays a Chalice on 0, making a Summoner's Pact not out. We'll have to see what he can summon up here.
Now, you just read my mind. Chalice on 0 shuts off Summoner's Pact from being cast for its 0 mana and then paying the cost later. If you're the Tron deck, what number do you want your Chalice on? Because we're probably going to see one in this matchup as Tron's a 4 Chalice deck.
Yeah, I would say if you see an Amulet of Vigor in play already, I would not put a Chalice on 1, but rather put it on 0. It also turns off the potentiality of a just Engineer Explosives on 0 to blow up the Chalice on 1. But if you don't see an Amulet out yet, I would probably throw your first Chalice on 1 to make it so no shenanigans with the Amulet happen. But I think throwing it on 0 is very, very good to stop all the packs and the potential Engineered Explosives on 0 to stop your Chalice on 1 happening as well.
Secure a Tribe Scout for a desperate Francisco suddenly here in Game 1 as Eldrazi Tron trying to take the first, and Francisco throws up the hands. He knows that's going to be enough. Here comes the Smasher, and this game is over. Smasher with Trample, and any 2 creatures that come through are going to be enough to do in Francisco here in Game 1. So we'll see the sideboarding coming up as Francisco on Karnulet looking to take down Eldrazi Tron with Karn. Mm-hmm. You know, that was interesting in Game 1 because neither deck saw Karn, and we didn't see him with 8 copies in this match. Karn's going to make his time known at some point. 7 copies. We see 3 for Francisco. But this is be something that both players are going to be ready to deal with now in the sideboard is an opposing Karn.
Mm-hmm. It seems like Francisco is definitely respecting the Chalice of the Voids from Visquiz with taking out a couple of the Summoners packs here, and also respecting them with bringing in the Force of Vigors and Reclamation Sage. It is going to be a little bit awkward now with Chalice on 1 more often because of the Path to Exiles that he's bringing in, but the Karns are going to be ever present with, especially from Visquiz, he's got Mind Stones to turn off if it comes from Francisco's side. And from Visquiz's side, it turns out the Engineered Explosives being able to take out the ever so important Chalices now with so many 1-drops left in Francisco's deck.
So we see Team Ice's view this week. This is Francisco on Karnulet. He's got another opportunity to deploy a turn 1 Amulet. This is where he had the opportunity in Game 1. It didn't go his way. He's going to go with the Secure Tribe Scout here on the play in Game 2 against Visquiz 87 and his Eldrazi Tron deck.
Yeah, Francisco actually has a very interesting line here because he can next turn play Amulet out, play a bounce land, return the Gemstone Mine to his hand, and then use the Secure Tribe Scout to put out another bounce land. But if he does that, he is only left with 2 mana for the next turn, but he gets to play Karn the Great Creator this turn. And that sets up
Karn.
Yeah. If a turn 2 Karn comes down, it sets up for even a turn 3 Mycosynth Lattice if he so chooses. Oh, the Azusa makes things even more interesting now that he top decked that. Now he can bounce a bounce land, play it again, and leave even more mana on the battlefield for a potential turn 3 Mycosynth Lattice coming out from Karn over the next turn.
Azusa was sort of the missing piece from the turn 3 Mycosynth Lattice lockout, and we're seeing this Karnulet deck just absolutely explosive here in Game 2. This is turn 2.
Yeah. He very, very thoughtfully ticked up Karn rather than going to get Lattice, because as we're probably going to see here, the Double Temple is going to Thought-Knot Seer Francisco. If he would have gotten Lattice here, while he would have been able to get it again with Karn because it's exiled, it would have left Karn at 1 with some potentially weird things happening over the next few turns. But now I think he's just going to lock out his opponent pretty quick here, chump block for the next turn to save Karn, and then go get some big creature like Wormcoil Engine on the board and lock up the game.
Karn going down. Will it be Lattice as his first pick? I think that's the opportunity to lock out your opponent. Highlighting the Wormcoil. I think he's telling us that he's going next turn.
Yeah.
What's happening?
Looks like the Lattice lock. Go for Wormcoil next turn. Karn will never die after that with only a Thought-Knot Seer out. And I would say Francisco's got this game pretty locked up.
How long do you stick this out if you're Visquiz and you see this coming down? You know what he has in the sideboard. Wormcoil Engine's what you're looking at next turn. You have no more mana. Yep. I would think this would be maybe time to play Game 3.
I would actually just concede on the spot because Karn now can just turn Mycosynth Lattice into a 6/6, and you can never attack ever again. Francisco gets to go through his whole deck before Visquiz can't even play another spell for the rest of the game, so he's pretty locked out. He goes for the attack, does the block, and I would say it's pretty locked up from this point.
You're a Tribe Scout. He's thrown in front of the bus, and this is looking very good for Francisco. He picked up the Reclamation Sage just for the rub-ins now.
Yeah, now there's definitely 0 outs from Visquiz. He's
not Seer, draw the extra card. Yep. This is it's all coming up Millhouse right now for Francisco as he picks up Game 2 quickly and explosively, and we're suddenly tied at 1-1. So going to game 3, you're going to put Eldrazi Tron on the play. Is Carnulet still favored in your mind, Gal? Or is this something where, because of the sort of soul lands that Eldrazi Tron can draw, that it's got the chance for explosive turn 1 and turn 2 plays of its own, and that being on the play might be enough?
Yeah, I would say it's going to be very draw dependent. If the Eldrazi Tron deck can pick up double, like he did this game, but on the play with the double Eldrazi Temple and Thought-Knot Seer, then he could have taken the Karn out of Francisco's hands, and that would have been a very, very different game. And he can also pick up turn 3 Tron early on, getting either both like a Chalice on 1, as well as a Thought-Knot Seer or Reality Smasher to really put on the pressure. But Francisco's hand looks great here. If he was on the play, I would say he was a sure favorite, but a Thought-Knot Seer on turn 2 could easily disrupt anything going on here.
I'm curious, with a Karn master like Francisco, what he's going to elect to deploy first on his turn. He's got the Amulet. He's got the Ancient Stirrings there as well. I think it'll be interesting to see which way he goes. My tendency as somebody who hasn't played much of this archetype would be to go Ancient Stirrings first so that you can set up what we saw last game. Amulet comes down, you use it the turn that, it's in play in order to make that bit of ramp happen. But we'll see what Francisco elects to do. Maybe some of it, Gal, will be dependent upon the opening that he sees on the other side from Visquis.
Yeah, I think Visquis' hand is going to be highly dependent on how this game plays out. If he has a Dismember for the Azusa, it stops the quick mana that can power out this Karn. If he has a turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer, it stops either just getting the Karn or the Azusa straight up. If he has it looks like he's leading with map, he could have turn 3 Tron, and that could be something bringing out a very big creature like All Is Dust, taking out the Azusa or something, or a Karn of its own, and then blocking out his opponent's Karn with something. It's highly dependent on what we're going to see from Visquis in these first couple turns.
Francisco elects for the Amulet on turn 1. Here comes the Chalice, and Chalice on 0.
Ooh.
Is that Scavenging Boneyard we see on the other side? All right, we'll see if this ends up being anything other than a colorless mana source for the Eldrazi Tron deck.
Yep, it's actually very interesting. Sometimes if you have one of your artifacts going to the yard, if you have a Karn out, you can Scavenger Grounds it away into your exile and then pick it right back up with a Karn minus. But right here it seems, this is a Dismember, so it's going to stop a quick Karn from Francisco, but with the Amulet out, he is going to be able to play it next turn, but we'll see if Visquis has an Eldrazi Temple and Thought-Knots here to disrupt all this going on.
And interesting to note, out of the sideboard, because slots in Karn decks are at a premium, no backup Dismembers, so still just the 2 main deck Dismembers for Visquis, and he had it at a key point for the Azusa here early.
Mm-hmm. Seems like Visquis is cracking his Expedition map, which leads me to believe he doesn't have a Thought-Knot Seer this turn, which means Francisco's going to get his Karn down. He's going to be able to plus on the opposing Chalice and free up any 0-drops he draws in the future.
So now, how will Francisco elect to navigate this? Karn and Walking Ballista, the only 2 non-land cards in his hand available this turn. He could go either way. I would tend to think this would be Karn to take out the Chalice, as you mentioned, Gal. And we've seen Francisco now make Karn, and he will, in fact, take down the Chalice. Does this send the message that now Visquis is going to be thinking, okay, maybe I'm going to be staring down Summoner's Pact on the other side, where we know Francisco is actually just freeing up potential future draws, as he has just the one card in his hand that can impact the board at this moment in the Walking Ballista?
Well, there's 2 things that Visquis can be thinking about when they seize the Karn Plus. He can see both what happens in this situation, which is stopping a potential Reality Smasher next turn, taking out your Karn right after you minus, or it could just be, drawing another land is not great for Francisco, but another thing is he's taking it out either for potential future packs, or he has a pact in his hand right now, and he could have Pact go get Azusa and do some other shenanigans going on with this Amulet. But now I'm not quite sure what's going to end up happening.
I love how the word shenanigans has entered the Magic lexicon, a highly specialized lexicon, and that just means any possible wildness that could ensue. So good shorthand to know. If your opponent says it's possible shenanigans I want to take care of, those are only good for the player pulling the shenanigans rather than the one that they're about to be enacted on. The Reality Smasher, of course, with Trample, that means the Walking Ballista not going to be able to chump block this. Karn doesn't seem long for the world, Gal. And with Francisco stuck on a 5-land hand, he's going to have to make sure the top of his deck treats him well, or we're going to see Eldrazi Tron probably be able to shut the door quickly with another threat if it gets added to this Reality Smasher.
Yeah, right now, Francisco has about 2 turns until he has the mana both to be able to put down a Primeval Titan, and I would say, depending on what we see here, he may only have 2-3 turns until he's dead if he doesn't find anything off the top.
Matter Reshaper plus Expedition Map.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to see if Visquis cracks the map and what he gets. I would imagine at this point he's looking to assemble Tron pieces if he has something he wants to go over the top of it.
There's 2 actually super important things that happen this turn. The Expedition Map allows Visquis to go get a Ghost Quarter, which can stop a potential Titan that could come down as he reacts to the bounce trigger and the untap trigger off one of the 2 mana lands, making it so he doesn't have enough mana for Titan. But then in response, Francisco, he drew his Sakura Tribe Scout, which if he tried to Ghost Quarter a land, then he could put in another bounce land, and both not only save the land that would get Ghost Quartered, but also give him enough mana to be able to get his Primeval Titan out.
What is Francisco going to be able to do here in the face? 8 power coming his way at the full 20, but it can't be comfortable. Certainly, you know that things like Endbringer could be on the way at this point. Thought Not Seer is certainly a possibility. Another Smasher would just be an absolute hammer in the hands of Visquis to close this door in a hurry. We could see the Walking Ballista sort of jump in front of the Smasher, if you will, and then shoot down the Reshaper. That's just going to give the Reshaper a trigger, and with Smasher having Trample, it actually wouldn't save Francisco any damage coming across. So Francisco's strategic options right now kind of in a vice here.
Yeah. Francisco actually had a weird decision there. He decided to end up pumping up his Walking Ballista, but he could have used Sakura Tribe Scout to save his bounce land, but with how many lands he has in hand right now, he doesn't feel the need to. The only thing he would need to keep the lands around for is drawing exactly Primeval Titan, which he would still have the mana to do if he didn't end up bouncing or using his mana with the Walking Ballista, but he found that just pumping up the Ballista is more likely to be useful, especially now with him getting to pump it up twice.
Garden couldn't have felt great coming off the top, but it does give him a 0/1 plant that he can throw in front of the Reshaper to help buy him some life defensively. And one thing that is often overlooked, if you didn't play against Walking Ballista when it was in Standard, it can end the game very quickly because it attacks for right now 4, and it can also just dislodge those 4 spears, as it were, and shoot you down outside of the combat step. So this game, when it comes to life total, is actually deceptively close right now.
Yeah, if Visquis end up attacking here with both his creatures and doesn't leave anything back to block the Walking Ballista, Francisco can actually use both the Sakura Tribe Scout and a land drop to pump it up twice and just kill Visquis straight up.
Visquis going to hold back the Reshaper, wants to get in with the Smasher. Mm-hmm. And Francisco has to feel comfortable in one regard, in that without Endbringer on the table, these Eldrazi Tron decks don't have a lot of reach.
Yeah. Now with that Blaststone you looked up with the Expedition Map, now a Titan is not nearly as potent, as well as just the bounce lands coming into play producing a ton of mana. So we're going to see how Francisco uses his Walking Ballista. Maybe he's just going to use it to trade with the Smasher the next turn. How he's going to use his mana now with all these lands in his hand. But drawing the Slayer's Stronghold is also a little bit interesting, as he can potentially give a Titan that he draws off the top next turn haste if he finds. Actually, no, he can't because he doesn't have the Amulet anymore. But it could potentially give a Colony Garden Expedition token haste and be the weird little point of extra damage they needed to win the game.
Yeah, one other interesting math angle to remember is that Walking Ballista, it's 2 mana per counter when you cast it, but to add a counter to it once it's in play is 4 mana. So this is going to take the entirety of Francisco's turn just to put his Walking Ballista at 5. And again, because of the trample on Reality Smasher, Francisco's going to have to pretty much let this Walking Ballista trade without using up the power that he's invested into it in order to get that Reality Smasher off the table.
Yeah, while he doesn't get to go for lethal like he had potentially set up for last turn, he does get a trade-off with the Smasher. It makes it so he can't attack with the Matter Reshaper as well this turn, because if he does, then if he attacks with both and doesn't have something to leave back, he still is dead to the Walking Ballista. So it has saved him essentially like 2 turns where a Matter Reshaper just couldn't end up attacking. And now this is also an interesting line because it sets up the Walking Ballista attacking next turn. The Matter Reshaper has to block, goes up to a 6/6, stays around as a 1/1 after he fires off 5 at the Reality Smasher.
And that's going to cost Francisco a lot of cards, because each time you target Reality Smasher, you have to discard a card, but he's got redundant lands in his hand right now, and I think he'd be willing to pay that price to keep himself in this game 3. Francisco giving the thumbs up to the camera. We'll see if it's going to be enough. Mind Stone coming down, going into cycle mode to draw a card for Visquis.
Actually, with the Walking Ballista, I believe, since it's just an ability, it doesn't make him have to discard each time. But it still will cost him everything that he has left in this game, as he has only lands in play, or only lands in hand and in play, essentially after that.
Another land off the top. His deck has been absolutely cold to him, Gal, and you're correct, I believe, on the Walking Ballista trigger as far as targeting Reality Smasher if he wants to go that way. But this will be interesting because he's at 3, and it certainly brings the Matter Reshaper sort of back into the math because of the 3 power on Matter Reshaper. And now the attack, all that I think Visquis has to do is declare the block here.
Yeah. What I also didn't see is he had the mana to use Slayer's Stronghold now, which makes it so the Walking Ballista doesn't even have to use its counters. With the Vigilance, it just gets to stay back, and now Visquis is in a very awkward spot with this Reality Smasher not being able to attack, the Walking Ballista setting up lethal for next turn if he doesn't block. He needs to rip something off the top here, else he's going to be in a very, very precarious situation.
You know, second Smasher would be the absolute nuts here because haste, 5 power, trample. The game would be over on the spot. Francisco has no mana up. Another cycle on the Mind Stone, and this says that Visquis is digging.
Ooh.
Here go the lands over. Is this another Smasher off the top?
Oh, it looks like it.
He's got the arms up, and now the arms come crashing down. It is the second Smasher, and that's going to do it.
Yeah.
Visquis comes away with the win. Francisco just throws his hands up. He knows that it was the one outer that absolutely locked this game up. No mana open to respond, and we see Visquis come in and take the win. Team Fire on fire. They've won all 3 rounds here tonight. They were trailing 18-17 at the beginning of the night. They're the first team to get to 20 match wins. They now lead Team Ice 20 matches to 18, with still 2 rounds to come this evening here on Night 2, Week 4 of the Modern Streamers League, brought to you by Card Hoarder and Card Kingdom. Sean Seacrest, along with Gal Schlesinger. You see him play as Yama Killer on his stream. He's on the West Coast and streams daily, and he's also playing here in the Modern Streamers League as Yama Killer, and we've seen him wield the Hardened Scales list to great effect so far here. In fact, he was undefeated coming into Week 4 this week before his loss to the Saint Doom. Gal, key cards in the match that we just saw. We saw Karn do its thing for Francisco in Game 2, but ultimately it was just the attack power of Eldrazi that got it done for the Eldrazi Tron list in the hands of Visquis 87.
Yeah, I think the Reality Smashers really played a key role, as we saw in the end. It made it so the Colony Heart Expedition tokens that Francisco was continually creating weren't able to be properly used to stop a creature. It could have been like Thought Not Seer or the 3-drop that was played, the 3/2, and it made it so the Reality Smasher not only had haste, it made it so on the final turn he drew the second copy, could go through the Walking Ballista. Walking Ballista couldn't jump and shoot the the other Reality Smasher. It was really the key card I felt like in that final game that allowed Visquez to take the match.
Will Team Fire continue to burn down the house this week? It's going to be Robcaster Mage and PuntThenWhine next in round 4. The Forecast of Doom sets the table on this, the Modern Streamers League.
Welcome back to the Forecast of Doom. Unfortunately, Team Fire is on fire right now, so you won't be seeing a big sweatshirt from me while I break out my ice parka. This Wednesday is not gone like normal Wednesdays, and ice is not in the lead. We have another Titan match, but a very, very different type of Titan deck from another Titan specialist, PuntThenWhine. This is Bloom Titan, which focuses on using Lotus Blooms and suspending them to get very consistent turn 4 Hive Minds or Prime Times down on the table. Now, I've been straining to figure out what the most important, what the best cards are in this matchup, and I've narrowed it down to 4 cards, and they're all on Robcaster Mage's blue-white control side. Those 4 cards are the 2 Teferi Time Ravelers, which his static ability completely stops Bloom, completely stops Pax, which means Pact of Negation doesn't do very much against blue-white control. You can't counter a Jace the Mind Sculptor if you can't cast instant speed spells. And stopping Bloom can really hinder the mana progression of this deck. So the 2 Teferis are very important, and the 2 Force of Negations, which can nonchalantly, while tapped out, counter a Hive Mind, I think is very, very key in this matchup. Titan is in some ways it's a resource deck, but in some ways it also has very key cards that it pivots on, and if the blue-white control player can interact with those key moments with Teferi Time Raveler and those 2 forces, I think this will go in blue-white control's favor. However, as we've seen with Amulet Titan, sometimes you just have fast hands and your opponent doesn't have anything for it. If PuntThenWhine has a turn 3 attacking Titan in blue-white control and Robcaster Mage doesn't have a Path to Exile to handle that, this will clearly go in the Bloom Titan's favor. People say this deck has no bad matchups for a reason. It's because when it needs to, it can be very fast. So I'm really, really excited about seeing this. I'm also really low-key excited about seeing 2 Amulet matches in a row. That is my take. That's the Forecast of Doom. Let's see how it all plays out.
Can blue-white control come up with enough answers against this fast, big mana, highly specialized Bloom Titan deck? Sean Secrease along with Yamakiller himself, Gal Schlesinger, thank you for joining us. It's night 2 of week 4 of the Modern Streamers League. Gal, we're going to see this hand from PuntThenWhine's point of view. Managing the mana for this Bloom Titan deck is sometimes an interesting challenge, and we've already seen Punt go back for a new 7 once here. He knows what he's up against in blue-white control, and he's just trying to come up with an opening hand he's comfortable with right now. And judging by body language, I don't even know how much he likes this one.
Yeah, this hand, it seems like he kept, or is thinking about it at least. It's not great. Oh, it seems like he's throwing it back again. A lot of his hands just seemed very, very awkward. Like not even thinking about the possible counter spells coming out of the blue-white control player, but just the fact that his mana doesn't seem to be lining up. Like multiple Titans in his hand without the mana to get them out. No amulets yet, but he seemed to be keeping on 4. We'll see what he can pull out from here. It's going to be a little bit rough for him.
Yeah, Punt's going to start on 4, throws the first turn land out, scries away the Gemstone Cavern, and now ends up with the Thalia West. This opt comes over the top from Robcaster Mage, and it's going to be Ancient Stirrings for Punt. What is Punt looking for as he tries to get some momentum going on what's now a 3-card hand?
Yeah, he actually saw two important cards to get him out of this very land-light hand, which was both the Lotus Bloom and the Amulet, but it seems like he decided on the Lotus Bloom as it actually gives him the ability to cast a Titan, as he doesn't have many bounce lands to go off of right now. This Pact of Negation could be humongous in pushing through his Primeval Titan if his Lotus Bloom ends up resolving, or the opponent doesn't have a timely Teferi, the 3-mana Teferi, to stop the Lotus Bloom.
Robcaster Mage just developing his board. He was able to keep earlier in the mulligan sequence and just trying, I think, to make sure that Punt doesn't develop too quickly. We'll see what kind of control options Robcaster Mage has when Punt starts to actually impact the board. What looks like it's going to be a couple turns from now, as just the Thalia West, if he has to use it, would come into play tapped. And we're still 3 turns away from the Bloom coming off suspend. Now it's Narset for Robcaster Mages. He'll go digging. Narset under no threat. And we've seen Azusa already tonight, Gallon. Azusa here, it does something for Punt, but not a whole lot.
Yeah, it's very important to see that the Narset actually completely whiffed on finding any spell. What I think he's looking for right now is the 3-mana Teferi to stop the Lotus Bloom, or a Path to Exile to stop a potential Titan that comes down, or just a Cryptic Command to get to counter any big spells coming out, which could either use on the Lotus Bloom or the Primeval Titan.
It's hard to kind of wrap your mind around the fact that occasionally the blue-white control deck will miss with Narset, but now a second activation of Narset as well as a standard draw step. I think Punt has to know that his opponent's certainly going to have some kind of interaction when it comes down to that key turn.
Yep. I wonder, it seems like he's going to be using this path on this Azusa, which seems a little awkward, as the only thing that the Azusa is able to do at this point is attack the Narset, which I assume he doesn't care all that much about. And now I would assume Punt's going to be able to get this Primeval Titan down, no worry, with this Pact Negation, and go off to the races on this 4-card hand.
Punt draws another Thalia West. The Lotus Bloom is in off suspend. Notes of Fury to shut that down. And now Punt, he's got Titan and he's got the Pact of Negation backup.
Yeah, he is ended up casting the Primeval Titan this turn. Now Robcaster needs to have both a counterspell for the Primeval Titan and for the Pact of Negation, as he's used up his Path to Exile on the Azusa. So the best thing that you could have is a Logic Knot, it seems like here, with a Force of Negation for the Pact of Negation, and then I would put Robcaster strictly in the driver's seat. But if Punt gets this Primeval Titan to resolve, then, which he ends up doing, he should be able to chain up a lot more, seeing as he's got already Thalia West in his hand, as well as more Thalia West to go pick up some Summoner's Packs in the future.
Double Simic Growth Chamber coming up for the triggers off of the Titan.
Mm-hmm.
Now, PuntThenWhine just setting up, and with double Thalia West in hand, I think Robcaster knows he's going to be under a lot of pressure.
Yep. Robcaster, if he can deal with the Primeval Titan this turn, he can be sure that he won't be dealing with anyone next turn from the pact negation he has to pay for, as well as having to use the Thalia West to go get a Summoner's Pact. But I'm not sure. Maybe he's going to path in the upkeep. But if he doesn't have a Snapcaster or a Path to Exile deal with his Primeval Titan, he's going to be in a very, very rough spot.
Punt trying to just put the pieces together off of a 4-card hand that he started with, as he was not happy with really any hand he looked at. And I really, Gal, felt like he begrudgingly kept the 4, because 3 is just, you might as well just hand the game off at that point.
Yeah, I would have thought this game would have gone this way in any sort of imagination, due to the fact that he mulliganed to 4. He only had like a bounce land and a Temple of Mystery and a Primeval Titan, and that seems just like so far away from anything meaningful happening. But he found the Lotus Bloom off the Ancient Stirrings. He got to resolve the Titan with a Pact Negation. I think the Path to Exile, which ends up actually having another copy with Snapcaster Mage. But he's got another Titan in his hand now, and I feel like PuntThenWhine's actually in not the worst of spots, even though he did mulligan to 4.
And let's be honest, some things that Punt didn't have under control broke his way. The Narset coming up empty on the first search. So you know that Robcaster wasn't exactly refilling, and he could be on an action light hand right now. We haven't seen a Teferi. We haven't seen some of the bigger haymakers from Blue-White. It almost feels like, without being able to see Robcaster's hand as Team Ice is hosting our videos this week, that he may be right now trying to sculpt something rather than just, controlling the outcome of this game.
Yeah, I would agree. Robcaster hasn't shown any huge card advantage spells like Jace the Mind Sculptor or Teferi Hero Dominaria. Right now, it's fully possible he just has like a Path to Exile and maybe just 2 more lands in his hand, or some non-interactive cards like that aren't doing much, like an Oust or just a Supreme Verdict. And it's fully possible that Punt could take this game away by just casting Primeval Titan after Primeval Titan.
Yeah, Robcaster Mage, his Planeswalker package in the main, 3 Narset, 2 Jace the Mind Sculptor, 2 Teferi Timebender, that's the 3-drop, and 1 Teferi Hero of Dominaria, the 5-drop.
Yep. Well, this Field of Ruin is actually somewhat important, as it can stop some of the land shenanigans like the Slayer's Stronghold from giving haste, or some other weird things going on from the lands of PuntThenWhine that could be occurring, such as just looks like the most important ones being the Slayer's Stronghold and the Sunhome giving double strike. But we'll see now if he's got an answer for this second Primeval Titan, even though we've got the Pact of Negation again, the second copy from Punt.
Primeval Titan, just out of the hand, hard cast. Mm-hmm. What does Robcaster Mage have to interact with this, and will it be enough? Of course, every time that Punt has to use one of the packs of negation, if Robcaster can then come back with something like Swords to Plowshares, it eats another turn. And this phrase is often overused in Magic, but it at least partially time walks Punt because he has to tie up his mana.
Yep. This is now, with the Cryptic Command being countered, we have no idea if Robcaster has an answer to this Titan. And with another Thalia West coming up and going back to PuntThenWhine's hand, he's going to be having even more Primeval Titans coming down the line shortly. Oh, I did not even see that with the Crumbling Vestige. He can give haste here. That's a Crumbling Vestige, not a card you see often in the Amulet Titan decks, coming up very clutch here without an Amulet in play, being able to use the Slayer's Stronghold from hand to give haste and get another activation off this Titan.
Titan getting ready to crash in for at least 6. And this, in my mind, has always been one of the biggest advantages of the Titan decks, no matter what variety they are. And that's that they get to use their mana resources as also versatile spells. As you see the lands that can do multiple things, whether it's Slayer's Stronghold or many of the other lands that they have in their toolbox. And once you start using Primeval Titan, you have this ability to sort of demonic tutor and put these things right into play. I've always thought that was one of the most potent angles that all of the Titan decks use, no matter what form they're in, whether it's Carnulet or Bloom Titan or whichever package you've put together. The ability to use your mana base as a threat package while tutoring is just super powerful.
Yeah, I agree. As well as like he was able to use these like very weird lines that I know I would never have thought of, using the keeping the red mana in the pool, getting the Crumbling Vestige. Now he's thinking for a long time. I think he has a couple different lands he wants to get. A bounce land to bounce Tolaria West back to his hand. He wants to get the red-white lands to be consistently using the Sun Home. He wants to get the Slayer Stronghold activations as well. It's very, very difficult because he has so many different things he has to think about. Also, what's in Robcaster Mage's hand? Does he have another Field of Ruin, making it so he wants to protect the Slayer Stronghold, get maybe 2 bounce lands like he did, and how he wants to play this all out is very, very difficult from PuntThenWhine's side.
One thing that Robcaster Mage probably has on his mind, because deck lists are open knowledge in the Modern Streamers League, is Punt used both of his packs of negation already. Robcaster Mage maybe anticipated the first one. Certainly you're not thinking about the second one. We've seen decks packing 2-ofs come up big. We saw Dismember in a previous match here this evening come up big for Visquis as a 2-of. And we've seen now Pact of Negation come up big for PuntThenWhine here as it's protected his Titan. And he's got an opportunity to threaten lethal on this next turn.
Yeah, he can even use Tolaria West to go get the double strike land out of his deck, and then be able to give this Primeval Titan double strike, which would deal 11 damage with a Snapcaster Mage block. Though that is a little bit risky if Robcaster Mage ends up having a Path to Exile in his hand, leaving him with no more ways to go get Titans. But maybe he feels like he's in a position that he hasn't seen the path in the draw step, like in the previous turns, and he hasn't seen very many paths. He's already seen a path in a Snapcaster Mage that he thinks that he can go for that line and be a little bit more risky here and just go for the win.
I've been awesomely impressed with PuntThenWhine's use of the limited resources that he had. Remember, this is a mulligan to 4 game for PuntThenWhine, and he has been able to cobble together a line where that card disadvantage at the beginning on the mulligan down to 4 really isn't playing a part too much in this game anymore. We've seen the Tolaria West cycle for additional threats. We've seen the use of Pact of Negation. Primeval Titan has tutored up those lands. So he's sort of undone that beginning card advantage. And one of the things that's let him do that is he's playing against a control deck that at no point has put his life total at risk. So PuntThenWhine able to craft some of these longer game lines and recoup that card disadvantage from the mulligan to 4.
Yeah, and now with the Cryptic Command being used to tap draw, I'm actually somewhat surprised he didn't use... Oh, I guess if he's not using the Summoner's Pact here, it means he's probably playing around a Supreme Verdict or some sort of Wrath coming from Robcaster Mage, seeing as he has the Slayer Stronghold to give a new Titan haste. Though it is interesting, if he went for the Titan, played it out, it means that he could get the double strike land Sunhome, making sure that he has lethal set up for next turn, regardless of if there's even one path. There would have to be 2 removal spells or another Cryptic Command to tap down the team.
Robcaster Mage looking at his Narset search. Essentially, her tick down gives you a Azcanta the Sunken Ruin activation.
Yes. But his Jace the Mind Sculptor is a little bit awkward, because if he plays it out, then the Slayer Stronghold will just give haste to the Titan once again. But what's interesting is he could go Summoner's Pact, go find a Titan. If a Titan resolves, he gets the double strike land, Sunhome, Fortress of Legion, bounces it back to his hand with a bounce land, plays it out as his natural land drop, then has double strike on his Primeval Titan for lethal here with no responses from Robcaster Mage.
Asking for no responses from this blue-white control deck might be asking a lot, but PuntThenWhine has to also weigh, are we at that point in the game where I need to go for this? Because this is a second Narset adding fuel to the hand for Robcaster Mage. And we know that these control decks, they've got, with Snapcaster Mage, a lot of redundant options at their disposal.
Yes. I'm a little bit surprised that PuntThenWhine did not even go for the Summoner's Pact here to try and get another Primeval Titan down. It seemed like, even though he found Jace, he was kind of just going like, I have to represent something. And over the last turn, it seems like Cryptic Command count or tap draw is all that he had. And unless he found exactly a Path to Exile, which we didn't see off the Narset minus, I think it's pretty safe for him to just go and get a Primeval Titan. But playing it safe against blue-white control is not... Ooh, very interesting that he went with the path this turn. Maybe that's signifying he has a third Cryptic Command in his hand now to be able to counter the Summoner's Pact or a Primeval Titan coming down later.
And we see now those Path to Exiles are free for Robcaster Mage, as PuntThenWhine has the 2 basics in his deck already on board. Jace the Mind Sculptor comes down, and there are situations where in years past this would be absolutely game over with the card advantage and versatility of Jace the Mind Sculptor. But because of that Summoner's Pact in hand, PuntThenWhine still able to threaten lethal thanks to the viability of Sunhome. As you mentioned, Gal, that this game is far from over despite the relatively meager battlefield presence right now for Punt. It's all about that Summoner's Pact in his hand. If that resolves, we've still got a game. If Robcaster Mage has the answer there, it feels like this one might be sewn up.
Yeah, I would agree. I think if PuntThenWhine can get a Primeval Titan down and there's either no Path to Exile, he is asking a lot from Robcaster, especially with Jace brainstorming. But if he doesn't have a response to the Primeval Titan and it comes down, then it can easily just take this game away with the Slayer's Stronghold and the Sunhome. But I do think PuntThenWhine, this tap out, that's very, very risky now. Now that he can go get he can summon his pack for Titan, I believe he will have the win here.
Are we going to see PuntThenWhine steal this game on a mull to 4?
This is very, very smart from Punt, because I assume that Robcaster Mage was going to use he has a Force Negation in his hand, and that's what he was planning to use to get rid of the Titan, or rid of the Summoner's Pact. But now that the Titan, or that the Summoner's Pact was used on his end step rather than on Punt's turn, the Titan can come down, or the Summoner's Pact can resolve, and now the Titan can come down freely, and I think he's going to take this game.
And that was a great recognition of playing around your opponent's intent. That play from Robcaster Mage was screaming Force of Negation, and because, again, the game has gone on long enough with some Titan triggers, Punt can actually afford the 11 mana on this turn cycle to pay for the Pact and the Titan.
Yeah. This was a very, very heads-up play from PuntThenWhine, and I think Robcaster Mage's his head was in the right spot, but Punt just came up with the exact line that he needed to take this game away.
I am more than impressed, inordinately impressed with what has come from PuntThenWhine on a mulligan to 4. He has found a way. Sunhome is going to give the Titan double strike, and PuntThenWhine is going to take it down in game 1. Thanks to a late double striking Titan, he picks it up after a long, grueling affair, and Robcaster Mage has to be shaking his head, Gal. He had an opponent on a mulligan to 4, and he wasn't quite able to nail the door shut in game 1 against an explosive deck.
Yeah, I think PuntThenWhine played that nearly perfectly. The more I think about how he played, I was saying that I was surprised by some of his lines, but based on how it played out, I think he played it actually very, very perfectly, and knew exactly what he was trying to beat and what he was trying to win with. And Robcaster Mage, I think he played it well there as well. Like he besides the Detention Sphere, which seemed a little bit hasty on the 0-1, he could have left up Force Negation there. But besides that, I think he played it very well as well. Kind of got a little bit unlucky with the Narset minus a couple times, but I think Punt just played around masterfully based on what he saw.
Punt didn't look like he was interested in much out of the sideboard as we head to game 2, and Robcaster Mage for Team Fire is going to be on the play with PuntThenWhine up 1-0. Sean Seacrease along with Gal Schlesinger. You see him play as Yamakiller here in the MSL with you for round 4 this evening. Still to come, Sspiderspace in round 5. His Thalia Stompy deck is undefeated in the Modern Streamers League. He's attempting to become the second person in the league to get to 4-0 after 4 weeks. We'll have Sspiderspace taking on Susurrus, the Whir Prison Master, in our round 5. That at the conclusion of this round 4 between PuntThenWhine on Titan Bloom as he takes on Robcaster Mage on Blue-White Control.
Yep. I think PuntThenWhine has a clear keep here, but it is not clear what he's putting to the bottom. He did end up putting Serum Visions to the bottom, but I think there's an argument for nearly any of the cards being put to the bottom. With Pact Negation, if he just thinks, okay, I can search it up later with the Tolarian West or draw it later, the Serum Visions if he thinks I have what I need in my hand right now. I just need to wait to get to the mana. The Primeval Titan if he thinks I have 8 of these types of cards in my deck. I can just draw another one and be able to search it up, especially with Serum Visions helping my draw. And the Azusa less so much with the fact that he needs to be ramping up. But I think any of those 3 cards I mentioned before were definitely things that he could mulligan away. He ends up deciding the Serum Visions, which I think is definitely defendable for the fact that he has everything he needs in his hand. The Serum Visions isn't really trying to find anything. He's just needs to resolve this Azusa and go off to the races.
I think that was the one hole in this hand that Punt kept was on the draw, slow hand. You can't really expect that Robcaster Mage would have as difficult a time finding interaction in post-board games as he seemed to have in round 1. We mentioned it multiple times, the miss on the Narset setting him back, and now here comes the Ashiok. Ashiok is going to get to work.
Yeah, Ashiok stopping the searching of libraries, especially with both Thalia West and Primeval Titan, is going to be very, very key here. It's going to make the Titan have significantly less potency throughout this game, and it's also going to just potentially mill over things that Punt needs, like if he hits the Haste Landslayer Stronghold, that could be a big, big issue for PuntThenWhine down the line. But we aren't quite sure what he's exiled, as Punt hasn't looked at it, but I feel like the also exiling plus possibly Cryptic bouncing it to his hand again and starting exiling again, it could just mill him out if he draws too many cards.
And PuntThenWhine not able to leverage the Pact of Negation because he wouldn't have been able to pay for it on his upkeep and would have lost the game on the spot. So we'll see Ashiok in play. I don't know if a Primeval Titan without a text box is a creature that would be played in Modern. 6 for a 6/6 Trampler just doesn't seem that relevant. And Ashiok really erases the entire text box on Primeval Titan. So this is big game for Robcaster Mage to be able to shut down the primary, secondary, and tertiary win modes for this Bloom Titan deck.
Yeah, I would agree. We also saw in PuntThenWhine's Exile Zone at least one Summoner's Pack and one Titan, so he's quickly both. If Robcaster just has a couple Path to Exiles, he could just run out of ways to win the game straight up. And now with what looks like a Vendilion Click coming off the top, this will be interesting to see if he wants to Pact Negation here and then set up his Titan, just a 6/6 Trampler, or if there's something else he's worried about.
If you go for the Pact of Negation here to set up the Titan and Robcaster answers with Path to Exile, it's got to be hard to come back from in that situation. And it looks like Punt is going to let the resolution of Vendilion Click push the Titan to the bottom of his deck, draws a backup Bloom.
Yep. What I wasn't paying attention to there for a second was PuntThenWhine only has 2 blue sources right now. Mm-hmm. Robcaster has a Field of Ruin. So if he went for the Pact Negation and Robcaster used the Field of Ruin on one of those blue sources, lights out for PuntThenWhine, can't pay for the Pact Negation, loses on the spot.
Are we going to see Azusa into the red zone here? A double striking Azusa possibly getting going.
Yeah, this is very interesting because the Vendilion Click can't block this because it will just die to the Azusa, and the Azusa will just stay alive and do this next turn. But the Azusa isn't killing the Ashiok just yet. So It leaves the ability to find a path to stop the Azusa next turn, and then make it so the Ashiok static ability is still demolishing PuntThenWhine's ability to use Primeval Titans.
Interesting line by PuntThenWhine, and certainly you don't have success with a very specialized sort of branch of the Titan Amulet family without knowing all the angles to this deck, and Punt really is the master of this archetype, and we see him sort of getting every bit of it out of all of his cards. He won on the mulligan to 4 in game 1, now trying to find a way to threaten Robcaster Mage on blue-white control with just the Azusa and the Sunhome at his disposal.
Yes, Punt is now he's in a very still precarious situation. 0 cards in hand, can't use his Thalia West he has on the battlefield to bounce land to go and search for anything. He's only got this Azusa and this double strike land. It's probably going to clean up the Vendilion Click this next turn, But past that, Robcaster Mage is going to have 4 cards in his hand next turn. He's got the Field of Ruin to stop any interesting land tricks. And it's going to be a very uphill battle from Punt at this point in the game.
The activation of Sun Home. Now he's going to pay for he's paying for the cost pact in his upkeep. And land at the top is not what Punt was looking for there.
Yeah, Punt is mainly just looking for just straight up drawing Primeval Titan. Even Summer's Pact doesn't do anything anymore with the Ashiok on the battlefield. He's looking very, very rough at this point. I don't know if he still has any Engineer Explosives left in his deck, but that, if he does it on 3 while cleaning up his Azusa, cleans up the Vendilion Click as well as the Ashiok, and that's something that I think he's looking to do. Picking up this... Sorry.
No, Gal, I was just going to say 2 Engineered Explosives in the main deck for Punt if he's looking to go that way.
Yeah, he also picked up the Sunhome Fortress Legion, which is very smart, looking at the Field of Ruin from the opposing side, as he needs this to be able to get through the Vendilion Click that's on the battlefield.
Sunhome comes down again. Will we see it target the Azusa?
Yeah, I would have to assume he's going to attack here first, let Robcaster Mage decide if he cares about it or not, and then if he just doesn't block, then he doesn't have to use the Sunhome. Or if it's just now he's deciding the Field of Ruin, so he does acknowledge that it's important, but he's going to use it this turn. We'll see if he blocks the Vendilion Click, seeing if he wants to possibly find a Snapcaster Mage or any other random creature or a Path to Exile, take out this Azusa and leave his Ashiok on the battlefield just to clean up the rest of the search effects that Punt has.
And this could be just an opening salvo from Robcaster as well. Now he's tied up some of the mana that's available for Punt. You might even see him clean up the Azusa here. Instead, he's going to throw the Vendilion Click in front of it.
Yeah. It's looking like the lights are dimming for PuntThenWhine if Robcaster Mage has anything of importance this next turn. But if he just has like a couple too many lands and sands or just counter spells and Azusa can clean up the Ashiok, then it's going to be very interesting what ends up happening over this next couple turns. See if Robcaster can start pulling away, or his hand is just a little too land heavy / counterspell heavy, and he can't quite protect his very important Ashiok.
This is game 2. Game 1 has gone to PuntThenWhine. Robcaster on blue-white for Team Fire. Team Fire has won all 3 rounds here tonight. This is night 2 of week 4 of the Modern Streamers League. 5 weeks in the first half of our league, 5 in the second half. Players will be switching decks, or they'll be allowed to switch decks. I imagine we'll see some specialists stay with their preferred brews, and we'll see some people make the switch at that 5-week mark. That should be interesting. Week 6 coming up in a couple of weeks. Sean Secrease along with Yama Killer, Gal Schlesinger. Thank you for joining us here on the Modern Streamers League. PuntThenWhine playing his Bloom Titan deck, looking for the Blooms to come off suspend, and another land on the draw.
Yeah, he was not looking to find another Gruul Turf, let alone basically any land in his deck. He's looking for very, very few select cards. Ooh, the Surgical Extraction is kind of interesting, stopping any pact negations in the future now. But we're going to have to really see if he has an answer to this Azusa, take out the Ashiok, because if he doesn't, then this bounce land actually ends up becoming a very good draw, being able to use the Tolaria West he has in play, bounce it to his hand, search up a Summoner's Pact, then you've got a Primeval Titan.
And then he can start those chains again. We saw him leverage so well in game 1, despite the mulligan to 4.
Yep. So this attack, this point in the game is going to be very, very important. If he doesn't have an answer, then the game changes completely. But if he does, which looks like a Cryptic Command bounce, then that saves him the turn. But we're going to play this same game next turn, see if he ends up actually having a clean answer to this Azusa.
Yeah, Punt, you saw him with the hand over his mouth. He was really sort of hoping that was going to sneak through and change this game, but just too many pieces of interaction right now for the blue-white control deck.
Yep.
That's a time bender. And, I mean, the good news for Punt is he already has his Blooms coming off suspend, so he doesn't have to worry about that. But the bouncing of Azusa again, Teferi replaces itself in the hand. You know, Robcaster with 3 mana open right now. So we could see the blue-white control deck sort of locking in the sleeper hold, as it were.
Yeah. I mean, PuntThenWhine still has a little bit of hope. His Azusa hasn't been dealt with permanently by some miracle of luck. No Path to Exiles have been drawn. No Snapcasters during an attack. But it's still looking very rough for him. Like, there's still a lot of things that can easily deal with this Azusa, and once it's dealt with, and the Ashiok continues to use its sleeper hold on PuntThenWhine's ability to search his library, which is his main form of getting his Titan change and getting Titans into play at all. It's just going to be rough for him to see a way to get out of this game if this Azusa is dealt with.
Yeah, all those wonderful advantages that we were talking about during sideboard with the Titan decks being able to use this instant speed demonic tutor toolbox of your lands becoming threats. Ashiok just shuts off all of those shenanigans and really puts this Titan deck into a corner, and it's one that Punt is having a hard time escaping. His deck hasn't been helping him too much with some deep land draws here in the mid game. Now Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, comes down. Now the blue-white deck is going to be able to draw multiple cards a turn, and it's just becoming harder and harder to catch up for Punt.
Yeah, this Hive Mind off the top is actually super, super important. If Robcaster Mage doesn't have a counter for it, then he can just land the Hive Mind. Oh, no, he can't search up a Summoner's Pact with Tolaria West. Never mind. It's still, if he draws any Summoner's Pacts and the Hive Mind's in play, it's lights out. For Robcaster Mages, he has to cast his own Summoner's Pact, and he cannot pay for the upkeep cost.
So, but that would still give PuntThenWhine some hope. Robcaster Mage, he's going to have to work around this. Now, a key counterspell here for the Hive Mind, and I think we're going to see Robcaster off to the races, the Transmute.
Yeah, it looks like the Ashiok was dealt with finally. Now if this Tolaria West or this Hive Mind ends up in play, then it's going to be the game.
Does Robcaster Mage have a way to stop this Hive Mind? He knows that Punt went and got the Summoner's Pact, so he knows he has to stop this right now.
Yeah, I think there may have been a misstep the previous turn with the Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. He could have tucked the Azusa that was in play, but instead allowed the Ashiok to die, and now the Tolaria West to go get a Summoner's Pact, and now he has to deal with this Hive Mind, which it seems like he has a logic knot for, but still puts him in what was once a very, very good position to a little bit more of a shaky one.
Certainly, with Summoner's Pact live again, Ashiok off the board.
Yep.
Robcaster Mage just hanging on. He knows that this is the game if he can't stop the Hive Mind. So he's deep in the tank, and the Logic Knot is going to save him temporarily this juncture.
He barely had enough cards in his graveyard to get the Logic Knot for 10 with the 2 Lotus Blooms, the Cruel Turf, and the Forest in play. But now he gets to resolve a Titan, go fetch up a Tolaria West, plus a bounce land, and now Robcaster Mage is not looking like he's in the best position anymore, even with 2 Planeswalkers out.
Now, and again, I've been impressed by PuntThenWhine's patience and his ability to string together cards that make these redundant chains, because that's really what this deck is all about. Some Titan decks are all about Titan. Others can use Karn. We've seen Karn Amulet from Francisco earlier. But this deck really wants to put together chains of spells that result in Titans hitting the battlefield early. If that happens, great explosive starts. But later in the game, it becomes this very resilient engine that continues to thin the deck, continues to threaten 12 a turn with haste, thanks to Sunhome, Fortress of the Legion. So this is a deck that very much almost wants to be a Xerox deck in a way, Gal, into how it leverages its threats.
Yeah, it's kind of just continually getting the same threats repeatedly, and now we're seeing the Titan end up in play, and we're going to see what Robcaster Mage's answer to it is. He's still not minusing the Teferi, which I think at this point isn't going to do much with the Tolaria West in hand, being able to fetch up another Titan. But we'll see what he finds. He's got Narset. Maybe Narset can find a Supreme Verdict, clean up this board state right here. Another Titan will fetch up another Titan. Oof, the Narset whiffed, so I'm not exactly sure.
Time in this match.
Yeah, it's fairly unfortunate for Robcaster Mage, but now we're going to have to see how Punt is going to leverage his Primeval Titans that he's going to have both in play and moving forward.
A main deck Wrath of God for Robcaster Mage. You also have things out of the sideboard that he might be interested in something like maybe a Baneslayer to race. Celestial Purge isn't going to do anything against the green threats. Disdainful Stroke would be good if he could find it at the right time, and a Surgical Extraction.
Yeah, and while Punt drew the Swan Song, there's a Teferi Time Raveler in play, not allowing him to interact at instant speed anymore, which if this is a Surgical Extraction here, and then a Path to Exile or something to stop an attack this turn, then I could see Robcaster turning this around to make himself super favored in this game again.
Yeah, I mentioned the Wrath of God that Robcaster has made. He also has double Supreme Verdict. We haven't seen any of those big sweepers so far in the match, but Robcaster, I think, if he doesn't have one in hand, certainly that's what he was looking for off the Narset, just clean things up.
Yeah, I feel like if he finds one of those, a Verdict of some sort, he did +3 Teferi, so he could also just have a Verdict at instant speed now, and that would just be backbreaking for Punt at this point.
This is game 2 in what has been really our most back and forth match of the night. We've seen some great ones already here this evening. Snapcaster Mage. This could set up Cryptic Command. This might be a tap draw situation.
Yes, this looks like a tap draw, and he has nothing really to go back to his graveyard with this Snapcaster Mage, so it'll be a tap draw. And I assume he's looking either for just a Path to Exile for... Oh, he does return the Snapcaster Mage here, actually. I'm a little bit surprised by that. But, PuntThenWhine trying to use the Swan Song, but he realizes...
You're going to say no to that.
Yeah. But now with Robcaster getting a full turn of Narset, 3-mana Teferi, 5-mana Teferi against a hand that PuntThenWhine doesn't really have anything to do, I think the blue Robcaster, as long as he finds something here in the essentially 6 to 7 cards he gets to look at, he's taken a hold of the game right here again.
Yeah, he's going to have the natural draw. He can draw off Dominaria. He can move down Narset for another look. If he felt he needed to, he could Snapcaster, then target his own Snapcaster to -3-drop Teferi if he felt he had to dig that deep. So really the question is, I think, Yamakiller, is how deep does Robcaster Mage either want to or need to dig in the face of this board from PuntThenWhine?
Well, it looks like Robcaster Mage found a Path to Exile off the Narset. That's going to deal with this Titan, and along with the Snapcaster Mage, deal with a second Titan. And with only one more Titan left in PuntThenWhine's deck, or maybe two, it's going to be very difficult with all this counter, with his counter magic not being able to be used, as well as infinite Planeswalkers occurring advantage, and the Snapcaster Mage going to be actually applying a threat or just trading with this Azusa.
Moving up, the Teferi Hero of Dominaria, the additional draw. Now another mana source for Punt, and Punt had enough.
Yeah. He decided that with the Teferi in 2 turns, going to be ultimating, getting rid of all of his permanents, and just him not really have anything going there anymore. He's decided to scoop him up.
So PuntThenWhine will be on the play for game 3. We're tied at 1 game apiece between the blue-white control deck of Robcaster Mage for Team Fire and the Bloom Titan deck of PuntThenWhine for Team Ice. Our teams in Season 1 of the Modern Streamers League are playing to both fundraise and represent 2 great charities. Team Fire is playing for A21, which seeks to end human trafficking around the globe. And Team Ice, they're playing for the Cancer Research Institute. They look to research all forms of cancer that threaten us worldwide and use that research in order to bring about ends to cancer. Cancer Research Institute, A21, support your teams. Whatever donation you can make will be beloved by both of these organizations. Think about that, and you can take advantage of your opportunity to make a difference just below. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight here on the Modern Streamers League. Sean Seacrease along with Cal Schlesinger. And Game 3, Gal, this one is also, unfortunately, a multiple mulligan situation for PuntThenWhine. I feel his pain. This has happened to me lately. It seems like a lot. Maybe I'm more aggressive with the London Mulligan. Maybe some people have noticed that. But Punt certainly has been really fishing for a specific type of hand and has come up empty.
Yeah, he ended up finding double Lotus Bloom here, which is very good at powering out a quick Titan, but can quickly be dismantled by, if there are 3-mana Teferi comes down here, it's going to be backbreaking for Punt with him having not enough mana, even with his current lands, to be able to cast a Titan, and then him losing essentially 2 cards to nothing just from the 3-mana Teferi, and it looks like it just came down.
And I was just about to mention, if you're Punt, this is what your deck does, so you go for it. And with open deck lists, Robcaster's only playing 2 3-mana Teferi, but Robcaster has it on cue, on curve here in Game 3, and that is going to send these Lotus Blooms packing.
Yeah, losing those Lotus Blooms is awful for PuntThenWhine here. He's fine with the Teferi West, which I'm not sure what he's going to go look up for it right now. Maybe a Pact of Negation, or it looks like a Pact of Negation here, but he's at least 2 more turns off from a Titan, which gives Robcaster Mage a time to either play a Jace, develop his mana, so many things. He's just free to do whatever he'd like for at least 2 more turns.
Teferi, Time Raveler, and just its static line sitting on the board just saved Robcaster Mage a whole bunch of early trouble with those Lotus Blooms, and now he gets to start leveraging that Teferi in a number of different ways. He'll move it down, no targets. He'll draw the extra card. Looking for action or land, he has the 4th land drop, and now you would certainly think that Robcaster Mage has to feel comfortable here.
Yeah, now with the Field of Ruin, it takes even another turn off PuntThenWhine before he can play out a Titan. And with this Lotus Bloom on suspend for next turn, it's going to be taken out, as he didn't find an answer to the Teferi, but rather just a 3rd Primeval Titan he's not able to cast.
And these mana, essentially, you're looking at Field of Ruin. It's not only disrupting the mana flow for Punt, but it's also acting as a mana reduction because he's taking away the Karoo lands and replacing them with basics.
Yeah, and now he's taken out even more of PuntThenWhine's lands in Teferi West, which, even though they usually use as spells, what Punt is just looking for is mana sources. He can't cast the 3 Titans he has in his hand. He can't use this Pact of Negation. It's just looking like everything is coming up Robcaster Mage, and PuntThenWhine's just struggling to even stay in this game.
And taking away those packs, it takes away what we talked about in Game 2, the redundancy chain that Punt can leverage so well to make those 4 Titans in the deck feel like 6 or 8 or 10 sometimes.
Yeah, and now with what looks like a Jace coming down, he can either 0 to just refill his hand, look for exactly what he needs, looking for hit land drops every turn, have counter spells, have Path Exiles, removal, and find a way to kill him possibly with Snapcaster Mage of Undying Click. He also, if he wants to, if he sees PuntThenWhine start missing land drops, just start plussing on Punt. If you can't draw land, you won't be able to cast your spells, and I can't lose from that point.
I feel like right now, Robcaster Mage he picked up the blue-white control player's hymnal to page 1 and said, this is exactly how I want this game to go. You had Teferi, Time Raveler, shut off the blooms. Jace came down. You're drawing 2 to 3 cards a turn. Your big mana deck opponent is short on resources when it comes to mana, and you're just developing out your board. He's already got double Celestial Colonnade in play when he decides to start beating down. Everything right now is just tilting toward Robcaster. As we've seen Punt, I don't know what the gentleman prefers, but a beverage of his choice and a hug might be in order from one of his teammates on Team Ice after this match.
Yeah. Oh, the 4th Titan. So here he actually has a ability with the Crumbling Vestige, making it a mana when it enters play, as well as coming in untapped. He does get 1 turn to play a Titan here. Let's see if Robcaster snap taps his mana. That's not going to happen. And it seems like he's going to be using the Jace to just plus up now. It seems like his hand is good enough that he can just start plussing on Punt. Make sure he doesn't draw any of the very important things he needs to draw, like lands here. He's only going to have 5 mana for next turn. If he doesn't find another mana source, no more Titans, he doesn't have to worry about anything, and he just has infinite time here with a Jace, a Teferi, now a Snapcaster Mage to do exactly what he wants to do. And it looks like Surgical Extraction on the Primeval Titans, and now PuntThenWhine can't even win the game anymore. He gives up.
That's going to do it in what was a mega game 2 that took us through the highs and lows of this matchup on both sides of the table. Game 3 just was all Rob Castermage, and Team Fire remains on a tear here tonight. They are 4-0 on the evening. Rob Castermage comes back with the win. 19 wins so far in the Modern Streamers League for Team Fire. They are going to look to make it an even 20 in round 5, as they'll have the Whir Prison Master, Susurrus. He was streaming just before the Modern Streamers League started this evening. He's going to take on the last 3-0 player that's coming into play this week in Sspiderspace. And Gal, this one's going to be very interesting. Sspiderspace, with his Thalia Stompy deck, has been on a tear throughout this Modern Streamers League, and is a teammate of yours on Team Ice. This is a deck that is sort of reminiscent of some of the Death and Taxes strategies in Legacy, but they couple it with the awesome power of those, I call them mid-range Eldrazi. You're not looking to get all the way to Ulamog or anything, but you're using Thought-Knot Seer, you're using Smasher of your own in order to bring a lot of heavy pressure, and it's proven a puzzle that nobody's been able to solve so far for Sspiderspace.
Yeah, I think the Thalia Stompy is actually very, very good right now in the metagame due to the fact that it gets the London Mulligan, gets to look for those Eldrazi Temples, the Chalice of the Voids, and whatever hate piece ends up being good in the matchup with Leonin Arbiter, Ghost Quarter, Thalia, whether the 3-mana or the 2-mana, or just turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer, or sometimes even Eldrazi Temple, Simian, turn 1 Thought-Knot Seer, which he gets to have his choice of what he wants to be doing on turn 1 much more often with the new Mulligan rule, as well as just having incredibly powerful lock pieces against decks that he needs them against. I think Thalia will be a great player in this game, stunting Susurrus' ability to play out his 0 drops quickly and some of the other things he's got going on.
The Modern Streamers League brought to you by Card Hoarder and Card Kingdom. No matter how you play your Magic, digitally or physically, both have you covered. Card Hoarder when you need modern staples, or modern, let's say, shenanigans has been one of the key words of the night online. If you want to play a 48% Jund deck or a good deck, they can help you accrue the cards you need for either. Check them out, Card Hoarder and, of course, Card Kingdom. They have all the best physical cards that you need at the best prices, and I trust their shipping. I need things for tournaments on a semi-regular basis, and I always know that I'm going to get that delivery before that tournament that weekend. Card Kingdom, when you need physical Magic cards. They support the Modern Streamers League. Coming up, can Team Fire run the table tonight? Or will Sspiderspace join the St. Doom as the only 4-0 players through 4 weeks of the Modern Streamers League? The forecast of doom sets us up next for our final round here on the Modern Streamers League.
Welcome back to the Forecast of Doom. Team Fire is not doing well. I blame myself because I moved myself to Monday night instead of Wednesday nights, and it probably messed everybody up, and now we're not winning this week. But Sspiderspace is fantastic, and he's playing against a fantastic opponent, so this should be a really, really interesting match. There's some key cards that our hosts already mentioned tonight. Thalia, I think, might be the most important card on Sspiderspace's side because Thalia slows down and hits pretty much every single card on Susurus's side. Leonin Arbiter does hit Whir, which is okay, but not particularly great. Now, Bridge can slow down a Thalia Stompy aggro attack, but it won't end Sspiderspace's dreams because Thought-Knot Seer and Eldrazi Displacer can actually combine together to mill an opponent out with a free Thoughtseize every single activation. That is a really neat way that Sspiderspace can try to get around Bridge. I think Sspiderspace is slightly favored here, and only because he has that Consulate Crackdown in the sideboard where if he casts it, the game is pretty much just over. I think main board, Sspiderspace is going to be on an aggro plan, try to get as many smashers down as possible, and post board he's going to be digging for those Wear Tears and Consulate Crackdown. Susurus, on the other hand, has Karn, and we've seen how powerful Karn is tonight, and I think that is really got to be his game plan. Now, Sspiderspace does have to respect those three Urzas coming out of Susurus' sideboard, so I wouldn't be surprised if he keeps in a little bit of removal, maybe a Dismember or two, maybe just that Winds of Abandon to deal with a mass of Thopters or something that could come out from that side. So that is my prediction. That is my forecast. Let's see how it all plays out.
In round 5, an undefeated Sspiderspace trying to take down Karn. On the other side of the table, it's going to be Karn versus all comers again here in round 5. Sean Secrease along with Yama Killer, Gal Schlesinger. This is the Modern Streamers League. You want to know more about matchups, what nights we're on, Monday and Wednesday, deck lists. It's all up for you online at ModernStreamersLeague.com, and you can check out the Twitch channel anytime as well. Gal, this is going to be an interesting matchup, and we see that Thalia early. That's going to back up this Chalice on 0, and Sspiderspace almost feels like he's the prison deck at the moment.
Yeah, Spider both got to put down a Chalice on 0, which Susurus is playing at least 8 zeros in Mishra's Bauble and Mox Opal, and then got to put down a quick Thalia on turn 2. This also he drew a second Eldrazi Temple on turn 3, being able to throw down a Reality Smasher super quick. While Karn now gets to look up an Ensnaring Bridge, I would have to assume, out of the sideboard. It will be quickly dealt with by Reality Smasher and not have the Chalice of the Void taken out quite yet. But we will have to see exactly how he's going to play out. He could attack Susurus, put him down to 6, but leave the Karn out. But that seems a little bit rough for him. So both players have a great start, though.
Yeah, Sspiderspace. I mean, you heard Mike talk about it, St. Doom, in the Forecast of Doom, that he expected Sspiderspace to go aggro in game 1, and he's got probably, if you let him pick the 3 cards he would cast on turns 1, 2, and 3, he got all 3 of those.
Yeah. I would agree. Susurus having the Gemstone Caverns out quickly gave him a great start, being able to put down the turn 2 Mana Rock, which allowed him to ramp up quickly and not have a bunch of cards stuck in his hand for this Ensnaring Bridge he's going to get down. Now we're just going to have to wait to see if he has either a bunch of 0 drops, a bunch of lands, see if he can empty his hand before this Displacer and Thalia can get through the Ensnaring Bridge.
Ensnaring Bridge getting set to come down. Can he empty the hand enough, though? He'll be able to get at least underneath the Smasher, it seems like.
Yeah, I believe the Smasher won't be able to attack, but now we have to see the Chalice is down. How many zeros can he get onto the battlefield? Maybe he plays out a Mox Opal for just 1 extra mana. He seemed to have a land, and the Ensnaring Bridge has got 2 cards left in hand, which the Thalia can attack through, but I'm not sure how well Sspiderspace will be able to get through this game. I see the Karn's going down now, but he doesn't have any ways to get extra cards in Susurus' hand, and I'm not sure how much longer Spider will have left in this game to even be able to attack. Oof.
a backup Karn, and the Blast Zone is on the table for Susurrus as well, which means he's got sort of a long game removal plan if he needs it. And you see Sspiderspace just waving the hand at the second Karn. He knows that that's going to be trouble for him. Now he was able to pull together the Sorcerer's Spyglass out of it, and that turns off the ability for Sspiderspace to get creative with his activations. And now a backup displacer, which was already turned off, and this game feels like it's getting away. And Sspiderspace, the undefeated 3-0 coming in after a great start, Gal, he went down fairly quickly to back-to-back Karns.
Yes, Sspiderspace actually has a way to beat an Ensnaring Bridge here, even when he has 0 cards in hand, by using a mixture of Thought-Knot Seer plus Eldrazi Displacer to strand lands in his opponent's hand, or just to exile a bunch of cards from his deck and just win on a mill plan. But with the Sorcerer's Spyglass taking out the Eldrazi Displacer in the main deck, he did not have any clear ways to beat what Susurrus is doing. Post-board, he does get a lot of good answers. He gets Consulate Crackdown, takes out all the artifacts that Susurrus has. So if he ends up getting a reasonable board, take out all the artifacts, including the Ensnaring Bridge, you can just go straight for the Juggler with a bunch of Reality Smashers, Thought-Knot Seers, and just kill him in one blow. He also gets Wear and Tear, just destroy any artifact, and a Karn Silent Versa to dig in his deck to look for these answers that he needs.
Yeah, we heard St. Doom mention it, that Consulate Crackdown is the ace of aces in this matchup. But do you want it in your opening hand?
Yep. I think this is actually a hand that very close for Sspiderspace to mulligan. It does have Thalia and Chalice and Consulate Crackdown, which is a really important card. But his pressure just isn't quite here. He doesn't have a Reality Smasher, doesn't have a Thought-Knot Seer. And while Susurrus looks like he mulliganed to 5 and got rid of a card with the Gemstone Caverns, we're going to have to see if Sspiderspace can apply the pressure he needs to be able to get underneath the bridge from below that is most likely coming out from Susurrus very quickly.
I got to look. Yeah, just 1 Gemstone Caverns in the main deck for Susurrus, and he's had it pre-game both games.
Yep. These players are going lightning quick. Also, they're playing turns like that. And we can see Susurrus missed on any castable spell on turn 3, even with 3 lands out because of the Thalia. And now looks like Sspiderspace is going to be running away with this game.
He brings down the Arbiter. That's going to make it a pain to search your library. Yep. And that's certainly something that the Whir prison list relies on.
Yes. And now with Karn Sign of Urza coming down, going to pop out a 2-2 here, I assume, and a 3-3 next turn. Sspiderspace, even with an Ensnaring Bridge coming down, he's just going to be able to push through lethal with the Consulate Crackdown. It looks like the game's over.
And Sspiderspace picks up game 2. You mentioned it. I thought we might be settling in for another long, grindy match on the heels of what we just saw between Robcaster and PuntThenWhine. Instead, it's been lightning-paced magic as Sspiderspace and Susurrus have split games 1 and 2. So Team Fire, they're looking for a win from Susurrus to sweep this evening. It would be the first sweep on a night of the Modern Streamers League in the history of the league, the glorious history that spans now 4 total weeks. But you would see history nonetheless. Sspiderspace, on the other hand, trying to join the St. Doom as the only undefeated players after 4 weeks in the Modern Streamers League. Now you're going to get to see Whir Prison on the play. And, Gal, I think that we're going to see a little different texture to this game if players both get hands that are reasonable for the matchup.
Yeah, and Sspiderspace is actually he gets to play a very, very different game when he's on the draw. He's decided he doesn't want any of his Chalice of the Voids. He can't top the 0 drops before they come down. He's taking them all out. He's going to go for a much more aggressively slanted game with bringing back in some of his Reality Smashers and just trying to be quick and ruthless on the draw and try to aggro out Susurrus before he can get his lock established.
This is going to bring pressure a little bit later, but with the Wear Tear and the colored mana, is this going to be something Sspiderspace has to seriously consider? He's sort of, you can see him thinking about it, and he's going to keep it.
Yep. This is a little bit slow, but he does have a removal spell for an Ensnaring Bridge, and he does have double Thought-Knot Seer. This Thalia was nearly the perfect draw that Spider could ask for. As you can see, with big smile, big thumbs up, it makes it so Sister's hand is going to be much slower, and it also means that he gets to be aggressive and bridge the gap between these two Thought-Knot Seers he has in his hand.
The early extra land for Sspiderspace, as we've seen that play a big part in this throughout the evening in this 2 matchup. We've seen the early bonus lands on both sides of the board really make the difference when it comes to early mana production.
Yeah, being able to get down the Thalia on turn 1, especially when Sister's led on a Tolaria West, was super important. Oof. This is rough, because he's got 3 incredibly important cards, but he can't actually cast any of them right now, except for Whir, but Whir can only be cast for 1 because of the Thalia. So does he take the Ensnaring Bridge, which he ends up taking, because the Karn is 2 turns off, even if he draws double mana source, and the Whir, which he can deal with the next turn with Thought-Knot Seer. So I would say that Sspiderspace is looking very good in this game, being able to disrupt again this next turn with Thought-Knot Seer, and have a shatter effect for any potential bridge coming down the next turn.
And with the amount of pressure that we see Sspiderspace putting on Susurrus, it's not actually worth it, I don't think, to go after the Mox, because the Thalia is taxing it enough, and you're just going to hold the Wear Tear now for the bridge, I would imagine. Yeah,
and now Sisurrus is left with a Karn he can't cast, and even if he draws a land that can cast the Karn, it looks like Spider took it.
And Sspiderspace wins a lightning round, one that I thought would be a lot more involved with the interplay between those 2 decks, but each player just had hands that were amazing for the games that they won. And so Sspiderspace joins the Saint Doom as the only 2 players undefeated after 4 weeks in the Modern Streamers League. You earned it. You can go ahead and celebrate. But Sspiderspace also sort of nipped the potential sweep by Team Fire as well. So after 4 full weeks of play, we see Team Fire, who comes in this evening with 4 wins. They get to 19 wins on the season, and it was, 1 win tonight for Team Ice. They already had 18 to their name, so 19 apiece? That doesn't seem like that's right. Come on in. 19, is 19 apiece.
Week 1, Team Ice won the week 6-4. Week 2, Team Fire won 6-4. Week 3, we tied 5-5, and this tonight, Team Fire won 6-4. So we were 1 match away from winning one more. If Team Ice won 1 more match, we had another tied week here. It's every single week so far in the Modern Streamers League has come down to 1 match. And I would even argue 1 game, because all these matches have been very, very close, as we just saw. And even our match, Gal, you wrecked me game 1, and games 2 and 3, if things had gone a little bit differently, things had gone a little bit differently, then you would be undefeated right now, which honestly you deserve to be. You're a fantastic player. I've watched your streams. You are amazing. But everything in Magic is always so close. It's always such a game of tiny little things, a draw step here, a draw step there, a decision point. We saw an excellent line from Francisco tonight playing that Gemstone mine, so he was setting up for lethal, and VizQuiz recognized that and kept that Matter Reshaper back. If he hadn't done that, we would be going into next week tied 2 weeks in a row. And that is that is just one example of all the great details we've had so far this week and the weeks past.
Yep, adding to the 2-win total that Team Fire picked up on Monday night, they now own 21 wins for the season to 19 for Team Ice. Congratulations to Team Fire for their hot night tonight as they go 4-1 and lead the overall standings 21-19 in matches. After 40 matches have been completed, it is 21-19. It is just that close. If you're impressed with Team Fire the way I was tonight, you can support their charity, A21, which looks to end human trafficking worldwide. And you can also support the guys from Team Ice. Yes, we've got the Saint Doom here from Team Ice and Yamakiller, Gal Schlesinger from Team Fire. The Saint Doom team playing for the Cancer Research Institute. They look to research and end cancer in all of its forms. So A21 and the Cancer Research Institute, two worthy charities that our teams are fighting for throughout this season. You can make your donation just below. Thanks as well to Card Hoarder and Card Kingdom for sponsoring us here on the Modern Streamers League. Gal, you're going to be back to streaming tomorrow. You're streaming full-time now. What are you going to be playing tomorrow? And you go on at about, 11 o'clock Pacific time?
Yeah, tomorrow I think I'm going to be playing at least a little bit more of Marduk's Shadow. I ended up finishing my stream off with that and almost picked up a 5-0, but got demolished by some weird artifact Tron core tapper deck that took my 5-0 away from me. But the deck felt very strong and, could be a potential deck I could be playing in the next split for the Modern Streamers League.
Gal, what did you see tonight that impressed you or was your takeaway over the 5 matches that we got to watch?
I think both the Amulet Titan players really impressed me with how they played. There were many lines that I didn't think about, even though I could see the hands and talk about them. And they took lines that I would have never taken and gave them insane, if not just game-winning chances that, like PuntThenWhine's End Step Pack to play around Force of Negation and Francisco's Gemstone Mine to not show the Slayer's Stronghold. Both those were insanely great lines that I would have never thought of myself.
And we're also joined by the Saint Doom in the Forecast of Doom all night long. When we head into week 5 next week and players play their final week with their sort of, I'm going to call it first half of the season decks, is there anything that you're thinking, players are now thinking about the second half of the season, what they might be bringing to the Modern Streamers League? I think next week is going to be an interesting week to see who can finish strong before we transition into those new deck choices.
Absolutely. And just because of the way the league is structured, we are in an interesting spot because we had that tie on week 3. So if Team Ice wins next week, which I hope we do, then we will be ending Season 1 on a complete tie, which means everything matters for Season 2. Now, if Team Fire wins next week, then Team Ice has to not only win Season 2, but also get more game match wins collectively through the entire show. So it matters a lot what happens next week, not just for last times playing maybe certain decks, but also what deck I play in Season 2 is going to be very relevant upon whether or not we win next week. Because if we need to absolutely blow away, and I might take a riskier deck that has needs to take a little bit more chances if we need to guarantee a lot of wins next season.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what week 5 brings. We'll have it for you 2 nights again. It'll be Monday night and Wednesday night here on the Modern Streamers League. Yama Killer, thanks for hanging out with us so much. It was a great time, and we'll look forward to watching you play next week.
Yeah, it was a great time commentating, and next week, hopefully, I can take another match for Team Fire.
The Saint Doom will be back with the Forecast of Doom and be playing next week. Thank you for hanging out with us here on the Modern Streamers League. Next week, week 5, so much hangs in the balance. We'll see you then. Until then, good night from the Modern Streamers League.
My just like